Chapter 47. Other than being used to coax the baby to sleep, it was also a space pocket that could store many things. Now that Fengwu's milk bottle and diapers had been moved to Little White Space Pocket, Fengwu's space ring only needed to store her own things. Fengwu felt hungry after Fengye finished drinking milk. Fortunately, she had stored many delicious foods in her space ring these 2 days. She casually took out a drumstick and started eating. The sunlight shone in from the window, filling the room with the aroma of drumstick. Fengwu leisurely ate the drumstick in the room, while Little White was feeding Fengye. The atmosphere in the room was warm and peaceful. In this peaceful moment, there was a series of rhythmic knocks on the door. Fengwu grabbed the drumstick and went to open the door. When she opened the door, the milk-haired girl, Annika, who was smiling sweetly, saw Fengwu holding a drumstick and her smile froze. Then, her smile blossomed again. "Hello, you must be Fengwu. I'm Annika, a new student like you. I'm from the mage department. What about you?" Annika was a very beautiful girl. She had milk-colored hair, eyes of the same color, snow-white skin, a height of 170 centimeters, and a devilish figure. It was just that her breasts weren't very plump. She was a flat-chested beauty just like Fengwu. Annika looked at her roommate and found that this girl's breasts were the same as hers. This made her have a better impression of Fengwu. Because of Annika's figure, she was often disliked by her sisters. Now that she finally saw a flat-chested girl like her, she naturally wanted to befriend her. "I'm Fengwu from the Swordmaster Department." Fengwu remembered Tink saying that after other people introduced themselves, she should also introduce herself. It was polite. "Our roommates in the same dormitory are all here. Why don't we go out and have a good meal together? I heard that the canteen of the Sane Academy is very good. We can try it together." Annika didn't mind Fengwu's cold attitude. Although they didn't talk much, she could tell from Fengwu's clear eyes that she was a very simple girl. Therefore, Annika didn't dislike Fengwu. Fengwu blinked and finally nodded. "Xiaobai, take good care of the baby." Fengwu turned around and called out to Little White. Little White waved its hand in a very human-like manner, indicating that it heard her and would take good care of its little master. Annika stared at the baby, who was as cute as an angel on the bed. Because she was talking to Fengwu just now, she didn't notice the situation in Fengwu's room until Fengwu turned around to talk to her. "Why is there a baby here?" Annika exclaimed. She really couldn't believe that someone would raise a child in the dormitory. Most people raised pets, right? Even animals weren't allowed in the dormitory. No one dared to raise a child in the dormitory. "This is my baby." Fengwu tilted her head calmly. She didn't understand why these people had such strange expressions when they saw Xiaoyi. Xiaoyi was clearly very cute. Annika was shocked. Could it be that it was what she understood? Or was there something wrong with her understanding? "You adopted him?" "Yes, that must be it." Fengwu must have picked up a child out of kindness to raise. But reality told her that she was thinking too much. "My baby." Fengwu bit her lip and said seriously, "Why are all these people saying that Xiaoyi isn't my baby?" "He is." "So she gave birth to him?" Annika felt that she was dreaming. This little girl who looked even younger than her had already given birth to a child and was a mother. Only after Fengwu left the room and closed the door behind her did the dumbfounded Annika snap out of her daze. Annika was curious as to why Fengwu had a child at such a young age. Who was the father of the child? She had a lot of questions, but she wasn't familiar with Fengwu, so it wasn't appropriate for her to ask too many questions. She could only wait until they were more familiar with each other to understand more. Fengwu came to the living room on the first floor. There were 2 women sitting on the spacious and comfortable sofa. Both of them were great beauties with hot figures. One of them was wearing a swordswoman's outfit and had her hair tied up in a ponytail. The other had a head of mesmerizing aqua blue hair and looked gentle and charming. "Fengwu, we're really fated to be assigned to the same dormitory." Silda didn't expect to see Fengwu again. Although they had walked out of the small forest and entered the neutral city together in the virtual world, they hadn't met again. However, Fengwu's personality left a deep impression on Silda. Although Silda and Fengwu weren't close friends, they were much closer than the other 2. Therefore, Silda was quite happy to see Fengwu. On the other hand, the blue-haired woman frowned slightly, but she didn't say anything. She seemed to be very calm. Silda, do you know Fengwu? Annika was still thinking about Fengwu's child. When she realized that Fengwu and Silda knew each other, she asked, We know each other. During the virtual world assessment, we formed a team and went to the neutral city together. I didn't expect to have Fengwu as my roommate, Silda said with a smile. You two are really fated. By the way, Rika, you don't know Fengwu yet, right? She's also from the swordsman department like Silda. She's our roommate, Annika winked playfully. Rika smiled gently. Hello, Fengwu. Nice to meet you. Hello. Fengwu didn't smile. She pursed her lips and replied faintly. Rika wasn't happy with Annika's cold response. However, she didn't say anything. Perhaps it was her first day of registration and she didn't want any rumors to spread. All right, since everyone knows each other, let's go eat. I'm hungry. Annika rubbed her stomach cutely as if her stomach was really growling. Silda patted her shoulder. All right, let's go. I've heard that the food in Notre Dame du Starlight's restaurant isn't bad and the prices aren't expensive. You can try it later. The four girls locked the door and headed for the dining hall. Along the way, Annika spoke from time to time. Rika and Silda naturally chatted with her. Although they didn't ignore Fengwu, they also realized that Fengwu didn't like chatting that much. They didn't deliberately drag her into a conversation. Fengwu, of course, didn't care if anyone chatted with her. She and Ajur had agreed to meet at the restaurant. She just didn't know if Ajur had arrived yet. The dormitory wasn't far from the restaurant. The restaurant had 3 floors. The first floor was for year 123, the second floor was for year 4567, and the last floor was for year 10 students. On the third floor, one could enjoy the best delicacies at the same price as the first and second floors. The year 1 champion also had the privilege to eat and drink. Chapter 48. After paying, Fengwu and Zilda lined up to receive their meals. The meals in the cafeteria were also divided into 3 levels. A, B, C, and C. Meal A was naturally the best. There were meat, vegetables, soup, and fruits, and it was very sumptuous. However, one serving of Meal A cost 2 silver coins. Although it was already very cheap for well-off families, it was too expensive for commoners to eat Meal A at 2 silver coins. Meal B cost 1 silver coin. The amount and quality of the meat in Meal B couldn't be compared to Meal A. Although the quality was lower, there was still a lot to eat. There was also the most popular Meal C, which cost 20 copper coins per serving. Compared to Meal A and Meal B, it was very cheap. Those who ordered Meal C were those from poor families. Notre Dame du Starlight had always paid attention to the quality of its students. For those from poor families, they could receive a living allowance of 2 gold coins per month. Of course, if they didn't want to eat in the cafeteria, they could also buy their own food and cook in the dormitory. The school only provided lunch and dinner, but not breakfast. If they wanted to eat breakfast, they could buy it at the school gate. Outside of Notre Dame du Starlight, there were many restaurants and breakfast restaurants. These people opened their shops here to do business with the students. The meals on the first and second floors were refreshed every day, but the set meals were the same for everyone. Only the third floor used the buffet model. Today was the first time that Dorm 302 had a meal together. Although they were eating in the student cafeteria, everyone still needed to have a serving of Meal A. Of the 4 girls in the dormitory, only Fengwu wasn't considered a noble. Originally, Fengwu was also a noble, but because of the matter of her giving birth to a child out of wedlock, she had been driven out of her family. Now, her name might not even be on the family tree. After the 4 of them lined up to receive their meals, they casually found an empty table and sat down. Right now, most of the people in the cafeteria were seniors. Fengwu and the others hadn't changed into their school uniforms yet, so they were quite conspicuous on the first floor. Of course, there were many other freshmen who hadn't changed into their school uniforms yet. Although they were quite conspicuous without their uniforms, they didn't attract too much attention. Did you hear? Freshmen have to earn their own living expenses for a year. The school will only give us 2 gold coins per month. We also have to find jobs in the city and then have the boss of the restaurant we work for give us a grade. If our grades are too low, we will have to continue working for the second year. I really don't understand why the Sacred Academy arranged this. We are here to study, not to find a job. Annika cut a small piece of steak. She felt terrible when she thought of the hard work for the next year. I heard about it too. I heard that it's a tradition. Every year's freshmen go through this. However, we don't have to work for a year. As long as we can earn a year's worth of living expenses, we don't have to work for the rest of the year. All we have to do is to attend classes. She was a swordsman, so she could register in the Swordsman Association and then accept missions to earn gold coins. Unlike mages, whose strength was generally lower in the early stages, it would be more difficult for mages to earn money by themselves if they wanted to do so. It's just a year's worth of living expenses. We can earn it very quickly. Rika smiled nonchalantly. She didn't care about that year's worth of living expenses at all. The three girls couldn't be blamed for thinking that it was easy to earn money. They were all noble girls and usually had a lot of pocket money. Usually, they just needed to ask for it from their families. As the spoiled children of their families, sometimes they didn't even need to ask for it. The elders in their families would take the initiative to give it to them. This was why these girls didn't know how hard it was to earn money. Fengwu didn't like to talk while eating. She was busy stuffing food into her mouth. She ate very quickly, which naturally attracted the attention of the other three. But Silda didn't think much of it. Swordsmen had always been straightforward and didn't pay much attention to these things. Annika had already seen Fengwu eat a drumstick, so she didn't care about how fast she ate. Only Rika lowered her head slightly to hide the contempt in her eyes. These commoners were really uneducated. Although she didn't like Fengwu's vulgar behavior, she didn't want to be too unfriendly since they had just met. So, she didn't argue with Fengwu. Living with a commoner really made her uncomfortable. Thinking of this, an idea flashed through Rika's mind. But now wasn't the time to implement it. Fengwu, you eat so quickly. Silda looked at the empty plate in front of Fengwu with interest. He really didn't know how such a small stomach could eat so much. Yes, I'm hungry. Fengwu pursed her lips and opened her big black eyes. Her voice sounded silly and cute. Just as Annika was about to say something, someone walked over to them with a large plate of food. The person walked over and sat down. Rika was a little unhappy. There was clearly an empty seat. Why did this person have to sit with them? Although she wasn't too happy, Rika didn't choose to quarrel with the person who had just sat down in order to maintain her image. Being a magician was a noble and elegant profession. She couldn't let these rude and unmannered people take over. Xiaowu, I've been looking for you for a long time. You're too slow. Ajur didn't care if there was anyone nearby. He was only here to look for Fengwu. The others had nothing to do with him. Fengwu was in a good mood when she saw Ajur. Her big eyes narrowed happily, and the corner of her mouth turned up in a faint smile. There were 4 of them at the table. Annika and Rika sat together, while Silda and Fengwu sat together. Ajur naturally sat beside Fengwu since he was here to look for Fengwu. I didn't see you. A trace of grievance flashed through the girl's eyes. She looked like a cute little bunny. Ajur's hand itched to ruffle the girl's smooth black hair. It felt good to the touch, just like his cousin's silver Gila. He stroked it a few more times before stopping. This is the food I brought down from the 3rd floor. I'll give you half. You have such a big appetite. How can you be full in one meal? He generously gave half of his food to Fengwu. Although he didn't want to admit it, Fengwu really did have a big appetite. As a man, it wasn't good to be compared to a girl in terms of food. You can go up to the 3rd floor? Are you a senior in the upper grade? Annika had thought that this boy was also a freshman and was Fengwu's friend. She didn't expect him to be able to go up to the 3rd floor. That meant that he couldn't be a freshman. He could only be in the top 10 of the 2nd to 7th grades. Because the top 10 of the 1st grade hadn't been determined yet, no 1st grade students would go up to the 3rd floor to eat. Chapter 49. Rika, who hadn't thought much of it at first, suddenly realized something when she heard the words 3rd floor. Her eyes, which were originally not intending to look at the 3rd floor, subtly moved over. Next to Fengwu sat a young man in a fiery red magician's robe. The young man's facial features were exquisite and beautiful. His fiery red short hair seemed to have a life of its own, and his red eyes seemed to contain a powerful life force. Anyone who looked at him would feel that he was extraordinary. Ajur didn't really want to talk to anyone other than Fengwu, but when he thought about how Fengwu would be living with these girls in the future, he decided to lower his status for once for Fengwu's sake and talk to these girls. Like you, I'm also a freshman, Ajur said with a raised eyebrow. Then how did you get up to the third floor? Even Silda was curious. I defeated the second year's first seat and proved my strength. From today onwards, I'm automatically the first year's first seat. Naturally, I can eat as much as I want on the third floor. He nonchalantly picked up a large piece of barbecued meat. The food on the third floor was indeed delicious. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted Fengwu to eat her fill, he wouldn't have bothered to fight for first seat. It was so troublesome. Wow, you're amazing. Anika and Silda cried out in surprise. Even Rika's eyes flashed with an unknown emotion. It's all right. Ajur had never known the meaning of modesty. He dared to accept anyone's praise. Oh, right. You still don't know our names. We're Fengwu's roommates. This is Silda, this is Rika, and I'm Anika. What's your name? Anika was a talkative girl. She felt that Fengwu's friend was very interesting. I'm Ajur. Are you a magician or a swordsman? Silda asked. Of course it's the mage element. Ajur's expression changed as he thought of something. Thinking of the few guys who usually didn't get along with him, he didn't know if they were here yet. If it wasn't for the fact that he had to go to Notre Dame du Starlight to learn how to control his power, he didn't want to come here and have any interaction with those guys. You're a mage, so are Rika and I. Maybe we'll be in the same class. Annie was very happy to know such a strong person. She thought about how she would be able to tell the people next to her that she knew this New Year's teacher. She would be able to gain a lot of face then. You're right. We'll all be in the same faction in the future, so please take care of me. Rika smiled, and her smile was filled with the confidence of a noble girl. Ajur didn't have any feelings towards Fengwu's roommates. As long as they didn't harm Fengwu, everything else was fine. If we're really in the same class, I'll definitely take care of you. Who would want to be in the same class as you? From the moment he entered the school, he was destined to not be in the normal class. Those who could be in the same class as him were the top 30 freshmen. Fengwu's two roommates were obviously not in this list. Ajur had never liked women. Although he was a little more amiable to these girls for Fengwu's sake, it couldn't hide the fact that he didn't like women. If he were to be in the same class as them, he would be annoyed to death. Fengwu didn't say anything. She was eating the food Ajur gave her. The food on the third floor tasted much better than the first floor. Moreover, it was rich in mana. Fengwu was very satisfied with the food on the third floor. After eating, Ajur didn't stay with Fengwu. After bidding farewell to Fengwu, he returned to his dorm alone. Fengwu and the others naturally returned to room 302 together. After a morning of registration, there was a welcoming party in the afternoon. It was an event organized by the school to welcome the freshmen. The welcoming party didn't have any meaning. It was mainly a speech by the school's leaders. Then, the senior representative would come out to welcome the juniors. Then, the freshman representative would give a speech. This freshman representative, needless to say, was definitely Zicheng, who got the holy magic book and entered the school first. After attending the welcoming party, Fengwu's new life could be considered to have begun. She kissed her baby and fell asleep sweetly. Classes would start tomorrow. The night passed. Facing the morning sun, Fengwu woke up to little Baozi crying. Not long after little Baozi started crying, he was held in Little White's arms. Little White skillfully changed little Baozi's diaper and then fed him milk. Little White always seemed to have an inexhaustible supply of spiritual milk. Little Baozi liked to drink it very much. Because little Baozi found his favorite source of milk, Fengwu finally didn't have to feed little Baozi milk anymore. After getting up and washing up, she changed into the school uniform. She combed her hair and let it down to her waist. Then, she put on a beautiful pink crystal hair clip. A cute little black-haired loli appeared in the mirror. Finally, she put on the school emblem and finally took care of herself. The school didn't provide breakfast, so Little White had already made a delicious breakfast in the kitchen before Fengwu woke up. There was meat porridge, omelets, fried noodles, and youtiao. There was also spiritual milk that she didn't know where it came from. She didn't know if it was the same as what little Baozi drank. Fengwu tidied herself up and made the bed. Then, she brought Little White and little Baozi downstairs to eat breakfast. There was no one downstairs, probably because no one had woken up yet. Fengwu had a habit of waking up early when she was at Mount Yuehua. In addition, Little Bowsy needed to drink milk every morning, so he would naturally wake up when it was time. After going downstairs, she casually pulled out a chair and sat at the dining table. Little White diligently helped Fengwu fill a big bowl with porridge. Then, he carried Little Bowsy and sat on the sofa to play with him. Fengwu was very satisfied with Little White. Not only did he know how to take care of children, he also knew how to cook. He was as good as Auntie Lien. Because of Little White's ability, Fengwu liked Little White more and more. Waking up so early in the morning, I feel like I didn't sleep for long. She yawned and casually went downstairs with a long sword. She was wearing the same school uniform as Fengwu. Her hair was tied up in a ponytail, and she looked like she just woke up. Wow, it smells so good. Did someone wake up to make breakfast? Anika had also just woken up, but she looked much more energetic than Silda. Her hair was tied up in a long braid and draped over her back. The last one to come out of the room was Rika. Because everyone had classes around the same time, other than Fengwu, who had a habit of waking up early, everyone else woke up around the same time. Fengwu, did you make this? Rika didn't find it strange. In her eyes, commoners all had these skills. If she could make breakfast in the future, it wouldn't be unacceptable for her to stay in this dormitory. Little White made it, Fengwu said as she ate the porridge in her bowl and looked at the three people coming downstairs. Who's Little White? Anika asked curiously. She didn't remember anyone called Little White living here. Chapter 50. That's Little White. She pointed, and Little White, who was playing with Little Bun, appeared in front of everyone. Can anyone tell me why there's a child in our dormitory? Why is there a holy mother beast here? Silda felt that he might not have woken up yet. Otherwise, why would he have such a strange dream? He actually saw a holy mother beast and a baby in the dormitory. That baby seems to be Fengwu's child. The mother beast is taking care of the child, Anika said weakly. She still couldn't believe that the child was really Fengwu's child. Fengwu, is what Anika said true? You don't have any self-respect. You even have a child at such a young age. Rika didn't like commoners to begin with. Furthermore, she found out that Fengwu had a child at such a young age, so she didn't want to maintain her image anymore. She felt uncomfortable when she thought about how she would have to live with a woman who had a child and had a messy private life in the future. Fengwu wasn't a child who was good with words. When she was attacked by Rika, she only bit her lips and didn't say anything. Rika, you don't know anything. Don't you think it's too much to talk about Fengwu like that? Silda, who had teamed up with Fengwu before, was on Fengwu's side at this moment. Rika didn't say anything else, but her expression didn't look too good. Fengwu didn't know why Rika was so angry. She didn't understand what Rika was angry about. Fengwu wasn't the kind of person who wanted to understand things that she didn't understand. Since she couldn't figure it out, she stopped thinking about it and ate her breakfast in silence. Fengwu's breakfast was naturally prepared according to Fengwu's appetite. She didn't prepare a portion for the other three people in the dormitory. After all, Fengwu was his master's mother. Little White felt that his little master loved his little mother a lot. Little White thought that it was fine for him to take care of her, but he didn't want to take care of others. Let's go out for breakfast. I'm so hungry. Let's go. Annika had wanted to ask if Fengwu had any extra breakfast so that she could have some as well, but seeing Rika's attitude, she naturally didn't say anything. After Rika left, Silda pursed his lips. Fengwu, why didn't you reply to Rika just now? She's so mean, you can't bear it. This Notre Dame du Starlight is not a paradise without disputes. You have to learn to protect yourself. Silda didn't want Fengwu to get hurt. Although she had only teamed up with Fengwu for a few days, she had a deep impression of the girl's naivety. Okay, got it. Fengwu could feel Silda's kindness. She nodded and continued eating. Silda sighed, told her not to be late, and went out to buy breakfast. Fengwu was the only one left in the dorm to eat breakfast in silence. Fengwu didn't really care about eating alone. For a foodie like her, it was fine as long as there was something to eat. Although Fengwu was naive, it didn't mean that she couldn't feel the malice of others. That Rika didn't like her. Fengwu didn't know why Rika hated her, but she didn't care. After breakfast, Fengwu asked Little White to take care of Little Bun and went to class. Fengwu was a freshman in the swordsmanship department. The department and the mage department didn't teach in the same area. After asking a few seniors who were passing by, she finally found the place where the first-year classes were held. After entering the classroom, Fengwu casually found a seat and sat down. Swordsmen were used to holding their weapons, but Fengwu was empty-handed. She didn't look like a swordsmanship student at all. If she wasn't wearing the swordsmanship department's uniform, people would have thought that she was a mage. Fengwu was holding nothing in her hands. She was petite and cute, so she immediately attracted the attention of many boys. Some of them even whistled at her. Fengwu sat down without a change in her expression. Then, she stared at the blackboard without moving. Originally, there were some boys who were secretly looking at her. However, after sitting down for a few minutes, the girl didn't move at all except blinking her eyes a few times. This was too strange. What was there to look at on the blackboard? Most of the girls in the swordsmanship department were straightforward. Very few delicate girls would enter the swordsmanship department. Those delicate girls who couldn't enter the mage department would definitely choose to enter the medicine department or the apothecary department. Of course, there were more students in the medicine department than the apothecary department. After all, the apothecary department was a department that burned money. Ordinary poor people couldn't afford to study there, unless they were heaven-defying and the school subsidized their tuition fees. It was rare to see a girl as cute and delicate as Fengwu in the same class. Most girls' personalities were similar to men's. Therefore, it was difficult for a girl like Fengwu, who was as cute as a little doll, not to attract attention. Fengwu turned a blind eye to the gazes around her. She kept staring at the blackboard. No one knew what she was thinking. It wasn't until Silda finished his breakfast and entered the classroom that he saw his classmates. Although he didn't know them, he still greeted them generously. Silda also found two acquaintances in the class, Hans and Bernard. Both of them had teamed up with Fengwu during the final assessment. They had also noticed Fengwu earlier. However, since Fengwu had been staring at the blackboard, they didn't want to disturb her. What if she was thinking about something important? It wouldn't be good to disturb her. Now that they saw Silda, Bernard and Hans naturally went forward to greet him. They would be classmates in the future, so naturally, they had to build a good relationship with him. Wow, I didn't expect to see you guys again. It's really not easy to have 3 acquaintances in our class. Even Silda couldn't believe his eyes. Their temporary party actually had 3 classmates. Just what kind of luck did they have? Not 3, 4. Hans pointed at Fengwu, who was still staring at the blackboard. Fengwu's 2 ears didn't pay attention to the outside world and only stared at the blackboard. The corner of Silda's mouth twitched. What's wrong with her? Could she be bullied? How could she be bullied? When he remembered that Fengwu was his roommate in the same dorm, he naturally had to help her. Don't worry. We don't know what's wrong with Fengwu. She has been staring at the blackboard in a daze since she entered the classroom. Bernard shrugged innocently. That scared me. I thought someone was bullying Fengwu. Silda was relieved when he heard that she wasn't being bullied. Then, he thought of something and said, "Let me tell you something. Fengwu and I are now in the same dorm. If anyone bullies Fengwu in the future, tell me. I'll protect her." Silda waved the sword in his hand and patted his chest in disbelief. Hans and Bernard didn't expect Silda and Fengwu to be so fated to be assigned to the same dorm. There were many people talking in the noisy classroom, so no one noticed what Silda and the other 2 were talking about. Chapter 51. Compared to Silda and the other 2, Fengwu was more eye-catching. All the students in the class were looking at her curiously. They wondered how long this girl could stare at the blackboard. 20 minutes later, the class began. A serious-looking male teacher in a black swordsman uniform walked into the classroom. Fengwu and the others were no strangers to this person. He was the examiner of the last exam, but they didn't know his name. The moment the teacher walked in, all the students stopped talking and looked at the teacher in front of them energetically. "Welcome to Notre Dame du Starlight. I'm your homeroom teacher, James." James was obviously not a talkative person. After greeting the class, he appointed Baird as the class monitor and a female swordsman as the vice-class monitor. Finally, he handed out the textbooks. "Remember to bring the textbooks back to your dorms. Don't leave them in the classroom." James' voice was stern and cold. It was enough to make people respect him. No one dared to mess around during his class. What I'm going to say next is very important. Listen carefully. It will affect when you will officially start your classes in the future. I believe many of you have heard that in order to give the new students a chance to gain experience, all of you have to find a job in the central city and earn a year's worth of living expenses. How much do you want to earn this year? Fill in a form and send it to me later. However, I want to remind you that the person who earns the most will receive a special prize. When you fill in the form, remember to fill in the form according to your ability. If you can't earn the money you promised, you will have to keep doing this job. You will only be qualified to enter the next school when you finish this job. Remember, during this period of earning money, you are not allowed to wear your spatial equipment or crystal cards. Your family and friends will not be willing to help you. I want to remind you that in the central city, no one will be able to detect any dirty tricks. If you are caught cheating, it won't be as simple as repeating a year. I believe you don't want to know what will happen to you. The first year's homework is not heavy. There are only 2 classes a day. For the rest of the time, you can practice on your own in the school's practice room. You can also ask the teacher some questions that you don't understand. With more time, I hope you can find a good job and earn enough living expenses as soon as possible. I believe that you will be able to live a much better life. A year's worth of living expenses. Some of the students who were mentally prepared didn't feel much, but the students who heard it for the first time felt uncomfortable. The commoners did not think much of it. After all, they had to help out at home. At worst, they could just find a job on the streets. However, the children of noble families were not so lucky. Since young, other than practicing their swordsmanship, the rest of the chores were done by the servants. It seemed a little difficult for them to earn money by themselves. For a moment, the entire class was filled with complaints. Fengwu blinked. Looking for a job? After class, all the students began to walk out. They were not going out to have fun. They were going out to look for jobs. Because she was required by the school to find a job to earn money, Fengwu also followed the group out while thinking about what to do. Most of the new students were very uneasy. Looking for a job? What kind of job should they do? They couldn't work in their own family's business, and they couldn't ask their family and friends for help. They could only rely on their own efforts to find a job. How could those spoiled young ladies stand this? A large group of people walked out of the Notre Dame du Starlight's entrance. Many of the merchants were already used to this and knew what these children wanted to do. However, there were a few small shops that wanted to find 2 workers. There were also some commoner children who went to apply. The noble boys and girls were very reserved and somewhat helpless. They didn't know what they could do. Later, these students weren't really that stupid. They thought that they could go to the Adventurers Guild and register as adventurers. This way, they could accept missions and do missions to earn money. Unfortunately, when they went to the Adventurers Guild, they found out that they had to pay to register as an adventurer. They also had to pay a registration fee of 2 gold coins. Hee. Now all the new students only had 2 silver coins for living expenses. Even their spatial equipment and crystal cards had been confiscated. Where would they get 2 gold coins? It was impossible to borrow from others. Everyone only had 2 silver coins. If you borrowed from others, wouldn't they be able to live? Fengwu didn't go to the Adventurers Guild. She didn't know what to do right now. Fortunately, not long after she left, a juror found her. Xiaowu, I finally found you. Have you thought of a way to earn money? I don't want to be a worker. I'm so dirty. Do you want me to rob people? I don't even know if that's against the rules. After a juror found Fengwu, he kept talking to himself. He didn't have any intention of stopping. Even if Fengwu didn't reply from beginning to end, he was still able to talk energetically. The 2 of them passed by a jewelry shop. There was a good show going on in the shop. Darling, can you sell me this ring? A blonde girl with a hot body swayed her slender waist like a water snake and rubbed herself against a fat man who looked like he was rich. Beside the 2 of them was a red-haired girl. The red-haired girl was also followed by a man. This man looked a little old. The 2 women seemed to know each other. They were desperately trying to steal the other party's things. When the 2 pairs of men and women finally left, the boss was overjoyed. He had made a lot of money today. When a juror saw this scene, his eyes lit up. He seemed to have a wonderful idea. Xiaowu, wait here obediently. I have a good way to earn money. After confirming that Fengwu wouldn't run around, a juror entered the jewelry shop. No one knew what he said to the boss. In the end, the boss sent him out with a smile. After leaving the jewelry shop, they went to several shops that sold clothes and magic equipment. When he felt that it was enough, he took Fengwu to eat. After running around, he used the time to eat to tell Fengwu his plan. He had never planned to do it alone. Now that he had found a good way to make money, he naturally wanted to take Fengwu with him. After eating 3 big bowls of noodles, Fengwu nodded her little head and agreed to join. For Fengwu, as long as she didn't do bad things like murder and arson like her master said, other things were nothing. After eating, the two of them found a cheap inn to rest for the night. Early the next morning, they began to look for their own targets. When the two of them went out, they naturally changed their clothes of the Sacred Institute. If people knew that they were students of the Sacred Institute, they might guess something. That wouldn't be good. Chapter 52. There were very few people who actually found a satisfactory job on the first day. There were also some who didn't even think about looking for a job and instead racked their brains to find a way out. The Notre Dame du Starlight was filled with talented students. Although most of them were shut-ins, there were quite a few who had brains. Thus, many of them were very confident in this money-making mission. For the sake of fairness, the school had decided to stop giving out student subsidies. This would bring more pressure to the new students. After class the next day, Fengwu returned to the dormitory and played with Little Bun for a while. At this time, only Rika and Anika were in the dormitory. As for Zilda, it was said that he had found a good job and would officially start work today. Xiao Wu, did you find a job? Anika happily greeted Fengwu when she saw her carrying Little Bun down the stairs. Rika, on the other hand, acted as if she didn't see Fengwu and looked away. No. Fengwu shook her head. I see. I heard that there's a shop at the end of the street that specializes in helping people find jobs. If you want to find a job, you can try it out. Many of the students in our class have registered there. However, you have to pay 500 copper coins to register and find a job. Anika said enthusiastically. Fengwu nodded, indicating that she understood. Although Anika felt that Fengwu's quiet personality was a little awkward, it wasn't unacceptable. After all, everyone's personality was different. You couldn't expect everyone to be enthusiastic and cheerful. Anika chatted with Fengwu for a while before leaving with Rika. The two of them were mage students and happened to be in the same class. Naturally, their relationship was better. Fengwu stayed in the dormitory and ate lunch made by Little White. There were fried meatballs, barbecued meat, and lettuce salad. Fengwu finished everything in one go before leaving the dormitory. Today, she had an appointment with Ajur to make money together. Fengwu didn't have any objections to Ajur's method of making money. She just needed to obediently cooperate. Little Bun was once again left in Little White's care, while Fengwu went out to meet up with Ajur. Their money-making plan was also put on the agenda. While Fengwu and Ajur were picking up food, Ziqing and Eve were going to a restaurant to sell recipes. Young lady, our boss likes these dishes very much and plans to buy them all. What are you going to do? A chubby middle-aged man with a shrewd look in his eyes was very respectful towards Ziqing, who was wearing an ordinary dress. Eve sat beside Ziqing with a face full of excitement. She really didn't expect her good friend to be so good at cooking. Just now, Ziqing went to the kitchen and casually made a few dishes, and it shocked the hotel manager. As Ziqing's friend, she felt very proud. How much can your boss calculate? Ziqing didn't answer him, but asked with a smile. How about 50 gold coins per dish? 10 dishes will be exactly 500 gold coins. Okay, deal. Ziqing also knew that it was already very good to be able to sell recipes at such a price in this world. Although she wanted to split the price, this was a money-making mission, and she didn't have that much time to wait. Ziqing didn't plan to go to the teacher to complete the mission now. She remembered that the teacher James said that there was a special reward for making the most money. As for that reward, Ziqing still wanted to fight for it. After negotiating with the hotel manager, Ziqing quickly received the money. After teaching the chef step by step, a day had passed. Ziqing's name appeared on the school's money-making mission list, and the amount of money she earned was a shiny 500 gold coins. Now, Ziqing was the only one on the money-making mission list. She was able to earn so much money in 2 days, which shocked the seniors. At this time, Ziqing still didn't know that she was now famous in the school. After teaching the chefs, Zicheng put away the pink crystal card given to her by the hotel manager and went back to school with Eve in a good mood. Not long after Zicheng left, the hotel manager went to the top floor of the hotel and walked in front of a man in a silver robe. "Master, she has left. Today, the girl named Zicheng came to the store and attracted the attention of his master. If it wasn't for his master's order, that girl wouldn't have been able to sell recipes so smoothly today." The hotel kitchen under his master's name wasn't that easy to enter. Without his master's permission, he didn't have the qualifications to let a stranger in. However, when he thought about the food that girl made, it was indeed very delicious. Moreover, it was a method that didn't exist on the continent. He couldn't help but admire his master's insight. "Okay, in the future, if she comes again, inform me." After the silver-robed man finished speaking, he picked up a book and started reading, no longer paying attention to the manager. The manager didn't dare to have any objections, so he bowed his head and left the room. After leaving the room on the top floor, the manager wiped the sweat off his forehead. His master's aura was getting stronger and stronger. Zicheng earned a lot today, and Fengwu and Ajur didn't idle around either. The two of them didn't look for a job, but were looking for targets. These targets had to be prideful, impulsive, and stupid with a lot of money. Of course, there were many people in the central city who met these conditions. Most of the rich and noble had the common problem of prideful people. Today, Fengwu and Ajur found a few targets that they wanted to target. The two of them had been investigating the habits of their targets, which gold shop they liked to visit, and who their sweetheart was. Just this investigation alone took them a lot of time. Fortunately, Fengwu wasn't a person who liked to complain. She did the work that Ajur asked her to do, even if it was just stalking. Fengwu and the two of them didn't earn a single cent today, but the two of them learned their lesson and didn't stay in the small hotels outside. Although the small hotels were cheap, a night's stay still cost 20 copper coins, and meals were extra. After staying there once, Ajur and Fengwu didn't plan to patronize the hotels again. After a day of stalking, the two of them left the city and entered the forest outside the city. They directly caught some beasts with good meat and picked some wild vegetables. Of course, these wild vegetables were picked by Fengwu. Although this girl knew how to cook dark cuisine, she was very clear about which wild vegetables could be eaten and which couldn't be eaten. Even if she didn't know, those plants that had developed slight intelligence would tell her which ones could be eaten and let her pick them. With Fengwu's help, the two of them picked a lot of edible wild vegetables. Although their space rings were confiscated, they could only buy 2 baskets to carry the wild vegetables. Although they weren't used to it at first, they got used to it after a while. Chapter 53. The two of them each carried a basket of wild vegetables on their backs. Fengwu also carried 3 or 4 ordinary small beasts in her hands. These small beasts were meat beasts that were often sold in restaurants. The meat quality was good and the price was cheap. Most people liked to eat them. Along the way, the number of people who turned to look at them was 100%. No one had ever dressed up like this before. What were they trying to do? When they returned to school, the two of them changed into their school uniforms. The school had a rule that students had to wear their uniforms on campus. Fengwu and Ajur naturally had to abide by the school rules. The two of them carried their things and walked back to their dorm under the gaze of the crowd. None of the spectating seniors looked down on them, but they found it strange that they were new. Damn, why didn't I think of hunting outside the city to improve my life when I was a new student? Why did I have to live such a hard life? A boy from the mage department almost beat his chest and stomped his feet. "You're stupid," a girl from the mage department said with a smile. The two of them are smart people. They can save a lot of money in the beginning. As long as they find the right direction, they can complete the mission easily. A boy from the swordmaster department rubbed his chin and pretended to be a prophet. "Come on, I remember you boasted when you were in your first year that you could complete the new student's money-making mission in a month. In the end, you worked for 3 whole months. Tell me, which of your words are accurate?" As soon as the boy finished speaking, he was surrounded by many familiar faces. In the end, he had no choice but to run back to his dorm. Fengwu and Ajur didn't care about what others said. Let them say whatever they want. That was Ajur's thought. Fengwu. When they returned to their dorm, the the sky was almost dark. Silda, Anika, and Rika had already returned from their meal at the cafeteria. When they saw Fengwu and Ajur coming in with a basket each, the three of them were stunned for a moment. Then, they stared at them with interest. Xiaowu, you and Ajur can't be planning to hunt for money, right? Anika covered her small mouth. She didn't think that this was a good idea at all. This kind of small beast couldn't be sold for much. Even if he really wanted to rely on hunting to make money, he should hunt a magical beast. The value of a magical beast was much higher. No. Fengwu looked straight at Anika. Anika, are you planning to cook for yourself in the dormitory? While Silda helped Fengwu to put the basket on the floor, Ajur did not need anyone's help. He placed the basket on the floor and sat on the sofa to pour himself a glass of water. I don't have any money left. I'll make it myself. The 2 silver coins were almost gone. Fengwu's foot was a little sore. 2 silver coins is indeed a little too little. It won't take long at all. I also want to go to the mountains to pick some edible vegetables and fruits. Unfortunately, I don't even know which ones are edible. After saying that, Anika stuck out her tongue cutely and was a little vexed. I do know some, but since I have money coming in today, I don't need to dig for wild vegetables or hunt by myself. Silda smiled proudly. She had earned 10 gold coins in just a few days. This month's living expenses were more than enough. You're earning money so quickly. What kind of job did you find? Rika asked curiously. I formed a small team with some acquaintances to hunt some small low-level magical beasts. We can make some money by selling them. But low-level magical beasts aren't worth much. They're only worth 100 to 200 gold coins. There are 5 people in our team, so after splitting the profits, each person will only get 1 to 20 gold coins. Wow, I really admire you, swordsman. Even if you just entered the school, you're still stronger than mages. We mages can't rely on hunting magical beasts to make money. It would be great if mages could be as strong as swordsmen in the early stages. Mages were very weak. They would only be able to fight swordsmen after reaching level 10. It's your magic that makes money. I heard that some water mages specialize in body care for nobles. They can earn 100 gold coins each time they do it. Silda had seen how those water mages made money. It was really easy to earn money. Forget it. There are too many people in Central City who know me. I can't afford to lose face if they find out that I'm doing full body treatments for people. Rika shook her head, her expression somewhat ugly. She didn't think this was a good idea at all. Silda pursed his lips. He didn't care about Rika's attitude. However, Anika had an idea. Why don't you use water magic to condense magic water and sell it? Water mage's water has healing properties. A bottle on the street costs 2 gold coins. Let me think about it. Rika didn't really like Anika's suggestion. As a noble lady, it would be embarrassing for her to sell her own magic potion. She didn't know if Anika and Silda were trying to prank her by coming up with these 2 ideas. Fengwu and Ajur sat for a while before going to the kitchen to cook. They hadn't eaten yet, so they didn't have time to chat. Fengwu was an expert in dark cuisine. Ajur, on the other hand, was only good at barbecuing. Fortunately, although Fengwu's cooking was terrible, she knew how to make food very well. Thus, a meal was prepared under Fengwu's guidance. Ajur really did have a talent for cooking. It was his first time cooking, but the aroma was enough to make one's mouth water. Anika and Silda stared at the kitchen, drooling. They were thinking about sneaking a taste of the food later. Only Rika remained unmoved. She didn't like commoners, so naturally, she wouldn't like Fengwu's cooking. Unfortunately, she forgot one thing. No matter where one was, a chef couldn't be a noble. Didn't she usually eat the food made by commoner chefs? Ignoring Fengwu and Silda, Rika decided to chat with Anika. Anika, have you found a job? I found one. I'm helping some manors nearby. I use wood magic to grow plants and vegetables. I get paid according to the number of times I use it. The income is not bad. Wood and water magic had always been the most profitable of the 5 elements. Although their attack power wasn't high, it was the best way to make money. Of course, the prerequisite was that one had to be able to put down their pride. Magi were all noble. Unless they really couldn't make a living, no magus with a future would do such a thing. The Magi students in the school were born with a sense of superiority. 2 days ago, When they were looking for jobs, they weren't willing to use their magic to make money. One could imagine that as time passed, in order to complete the mission, most magi would be threatened. After all, if they couldn't complete the mission, they would have to repeat a year. Chapter 54. Ajur had never thought of swindling girls to make money. It was better to make money once in a while. Even if he did it a few more times, the girl was not a fool. Sooner or later, she would be exposed. The two went to the adventurer's office to register as adventurers. Unexpectedly, they bumped into a few familiar faces. "Hey, Xiaowu, I didn't expect you to be here too." Silda and her team of 5 had already registered as adventurers long ago. They were here to accept missions. "So it's you, you annoying woman." Eve's disgusted voice came from the door. Eve was wearing a black magic robe and holding a magic staff in her hand. She looked at Fengwu with arrogance in her eyes, as if Fengwu was an ant on the ground. Fengwu blinked her eyes. This girl looked a little familiar. What a coincidence. "We're also here to register as adventurers. Do you want to do missions together?" Zicheng's smile was gentle and sunny, making people feel good at first sight. "There's no need for that. We already have a fixed party here." Ignoring Hanses and Purd, who wanted to agree, Zilda directly rejected the offer. She did not want to be in the same team as that idiot Eve. She still wanted to live for 2 more years. "Is that so? That's a pity." Zicheng's pair of charming amethyst-like eyes showed a hint of disappointment. It made people want to agree to all of her requests. Zicheng did not ask Fengwu if she wanted to join them. She also knew that Fengwu and Eve did not get along well. If the two of them were together, something bad would definitely happen. Fengwu and Ajur had no time to pay attention to Zicheng and the others. While Zicheng was talking to them, they had already run to the counter to pay the registration fee and fill in the form. When Zicheng saw that Fengwu was ignoring them, he didn't have any other thoughts. However, Eve was different. She already hated Fengwu, and now that she was being ignored by Fengwu, how could she let it go? She wanted to use magic to hurt Fengwu. Unfortunately, she had forgotten where she was. This was a place where a low-level magician could behave atrociously. She was just about to make a move when she was repelled by the magic circle of the Adventurers' Union. The adventurers, who were originally on a mission at the side, all looked at the door as if they were looking at an idiot. There was actually an idiot who was willing to make a move in the Adventurers' Union. It had been many years since they had seen such a naive adventurer. When Eve was repelled by the magic formation, she realized that her position had changed. She was clearly in the guild hall. How did she end up here? The 2 swordmasters at the entrance could tell that she was a rookie at first glance. So, they kindly informed her that violence was prohibited in the Adventurers Guild. Anyone who did would be repelled by the magic formation. Eve's face turned green and white when she heard the 2 swordmasters' words. She didn't understand why Fengwu was always a thorn in her side. When Fengwu heard the commotion at the entrance, she turned around and saw a flash of white light. Ajur sneered. If it weren't for the Adventurers Guild's powerful magic formation that prevented violence, he would have already thrown a fireball at that ugly woman and burned her to death. After the registration was completed, they could now choose a mission. Since they were still the lowest level of D-rank adventurers, they could only accept D-rank and C-rank missions. They didn't have the authority to accept any missions higher than that. Fengwu didn't know much about these things, and Ajur didn't expect the Fengwu girl to have any good ideas. So, after the registration, he immediately chose a C-rank mission with a higher reward. This mission didn't take much time, and the reward was 500 gold coins. The mission was to investigate the cause of Madame Marin's death and catch the murderer. There were quite a few people who accepted this mission, but they all failed. The murderer they found was either not the real murderer, or there was no evidence. So, they couldn't file a case at all. The mission was issued by Madame Marin's daughter, Miss Clara. Madame Marin's husband was a businessman named Wenda. When Wenda was young, he was extraordinarily handsome and had a good head for business. Because of his excellence, he attracted Madame Marin, who was also a businessman's daughter. Madame Marin and Mr. Wenda were married for 20 years. They only had an 18-year-old daughter, Miss Clara. Miss Clara was very capable. She could look after the business outside and help her mother take care of the family at home. Originally, their family lived very happily. But 3 years ago, Wenda met a very beautiful woman named Dusha. After Wenda saw Dusha, he fell madly in love with her. From then on, he never entered Madame Marin's room. He even wanted to break off the marriage with Madame Marin and marry Dusha. Madame Marin, of course, didn't agree. The husband and wife quarreled more and more fiercely. Wenda loved the woman to the bone and was determined to divorce her. Because Wenda betrayed their marriage, Madame Marin could get 2/3 of Wenda's property. This made Wenda very unwilling, but there was nothing he could do. The night before the divorce, Madame Marin died in the villa her parents left for her. There were only her and her daughter Clara in the villa. There were no servants. Madame Marin's sudden death and the murderer was a mystery. Clara suspected that her father and Dusha had conspired to murder her mother, but there was no evidence to prove it. The investigators sent by the Star Hall found that the murder weapon was found in the room of Mrs. Marlene's daughter, Clara. The case took a turn for the worse. Clara was arrested as a suspect, and her father was accusing his daughter of murdering his wife. This case happened a few months ago. It didn't happen in the central city, but in a city not far from it. Clara refused to confess in prison. She asked her childhood friend to issue a mission in the Adventurers Guild in her name. She hoped to find the real murderer of her mother and let the murderer get what he deserved. A juror looked at the mission description and found that it could be done. Wasn't it just to investigate and find the murderer? This mission seemed very simple. The murderer was obviously Clara's father and his mistress, Dusha. But if it was so simple, why didn't anyone who tried to do this mission succeed? It could be seen that this mission wasn't simple. A juror was never afraid of difficult missions. The harder it was, the more challenging it was. Are you sure you want to take this sea-level mission? The receptionist asked with uncertainty. That's it. Hurry up and register us, a juror shouted impatiently. He didn't have much patience. Originally, the receptionist wanted to persuade the two newbies. This mission had been taken by many experienced mercenaries, but they all failed. There wasn't much time left before the trial. If no one succeeded in this mission, it would be over. Chapter 55. Although Annika was a little hesitant at first, when she thought of the mission, she still wanted to look for a job that was easier for her and had a good salary. Feng Wu and Ajur finished cooking and sat at the dining table in the hall to eat. Feng Wu didn't ask Silda and Annika if they wanted to eat, and Ajur naturally didn't ask either. He and Feng Wu had painstakingly carried all these back, so why should they treat others? Silda and Annika originally thought that the two would politely ask them if they wanted to eat together, but after waiting for a while, other than seeing the two eating happily, the two guys ignored them and ate happily. This was unacceptable. Xiao Wu. Silda's resentful voice dragged out, and coupled with the pitiful look in her eyes, the two resentful women were born just like that. Ah. She tilted her head in confusion. Can you give us a bite? Silda asked pitifully. Okay. She took 2 small plates and gave them a bite. Was it really okay for her to only give them a bite after asking for a bite? The two of them exchanged a look, their eyes revealing a touch of helplessness. Looking at the delicious dishes on the table, and then at the bite on the plate, they couldn't help but think, can you not be so honest? Lika looked at all of this with disdain. Without saying anything, she went upstairs to sleep alone. The next day, Feng Wu woke up early. After breakfast and class, she asked Ajur out of the school gate together. Now that all the freshmen were busy, no one had the time to go out and have fun. Everyone was busy with missions, and everyone was in a rush. Compared to the leisurely senior year, it was a completely different world. Levi was a young lady from a wealthy family. Her father owned 2 big hotels in Central City, and her family was very wealthy. Although the Rand family was very rich, she was not too happy because her sweetheart, her childhood sweetheart, Big Brother Matthew, had always been indifferent to her, which made her very unhappy. Big Brother Matthew was so outstanding, and he was even ranked 10th in the 5th year of the Starlight Academy. Lao Yi was very worried that if she was not destined, her beloved Big Brother Matthew would be seduced by a bad woman. Today, Levi heard that Brother Matthew didn't have classes in the morning and would go to a shop that sold magic items to buy magic scrolls. This was an opportunity for Levi. She was not a student of Notre Dame du Starlight, but an ordinary young lady. She already had very little time to see Brother Matthew. If she didn't work hard, she was afraid that Brother Matthew would forget that she was his sweetheart. Levy was dressed very beautifully today. She wore a pink dress with a long gem hairpin. She had light makeup on her face, and behind her was a maid who held an umbrella for her. Was the standard look of a young lady from a rich family. "Miss, Master Matthew is over there." The maid on the side saw her young lady's sweetheart and immediately whispered. Levy blushed and looked at Brother Matthew affectionately. Brother Matthew was really handsome. Just when she was about to lift her dress and walk over to talk to Brother Matthew, she saw a very cute girl with black hair and black eyes walk over. Levy didn't know what she said to her dear Brother Matthew, but the two of them left the magic item shop. Levy wanted to follow, but suddenly, a young man in red who reeked of alcohol came over. "Go away, drunkard." The maid on the side pushed the drunkard to the ground. When Levy looked again, her Brother Matthew was nowhere to be seen. Levy was so angry that she chased all the way down the road, but she didn't see anyone until she chased to the door of a jewelry store. She saw the black-haired girl walking in through the door. Levy was annoyed that she didn't see her Brother Matthew. When she saw the bitch who seduced Brother Matthew, how could she bear it? She immediately followed into the store. As soon as she walked into the store, Levy found the black-haired girl asking the clerk to pull out a gem bracelet to try it on. Levy was very upset when she saw this. "How dare you seduce my Brother Matthew? Now you're here to buy jewelry?" Did she go to Brother Matthew just to get money from him? She had to admit that a woman in unrequited love was really good at making up for her unrequited love. After she finished imagining things, Levy gave the little maid on the side a look. The maid immediately understood and said to the clerk on the side, "Wrap this bracelet up. Miss Levy wants it." After that, the maid stared at Fengwu arrogantly. Fengwu blinked and seemed to be puzzled. Fengwu's puzzled look was seen in Levy's eyes. This woman was too good at pretending. But this lady saw this bracelet first. The clerk was a little embarrassed. She just saw it. She didn't pay for it. She asked you to wrap it up, so wrap it up. Levy's face sank and said unhappily, "This?" The clerk looked at Fengwu guiltily and wrapped the bracelet up for Levy. Levy took the bracelet and was about to ridicule her, but she heard the black-haired girl ask the clerk to see another gem necklace. "Humph, you won't be able to buy anything today." Levy snorted coldly. Sure enough, that necklace was also snatched by Levy. Later, the black-haired girl saw a gem ring and Levy snatched it. After the ring was snatched away by Levy, the black-haired girl no longer asked for jewelry. She turned around and wanted to leave. "Stop right there," Levy shouted. This bad woman wanted to leave when she couldn't snatch it. It wasn't that easy. "Listen to me, Brother Matthew is mine, and so are these jewelry. You can't take the jewelry away from me, and you can't take Brother Matthew away from me either." After saying that, Levy left with her maid like a proud peacock with her head held high. Less than 5 minutes after Levy left, a red-haired boy appeared. That young lady just bought 20,000 gold coins worth of jewelry. This is your commission. The total is 500 gold coins. A beautiful woman with a very good figure came out from the back. The clerk immediately greeted her respectfully. Roger took the crystal card and laughed arrogantly. "Thank you, boss. Let's work together again in the future." After that, he pulled the black-haired girl away. The beautiful boss smiled and asked the clerk to serve the customer properly. Then, she went to the back of the shop. At this time, the red-haired boy who was pulling the black-haired girl out of the shop had a proud look on his face. "See? I told you my idea was good. These days, there are a lot of stupid people with a lot of money. As long as you put your mind to it, you can definitely find it." Ajur was very satisfied with his idea. Ajur is so good. Fengwu looked at Ajur with a serious face. "I know I'm good. Let's go to the Adventurers Guild and register as an adventurer. This way, we can fight and earn money at the same time." Chapter 56. Wait, we want to take this mission. A sweet female voice suddenly interrupted the conversation between Ajur and the receptionist. Fengwu and Ajur turned their heads and saw 2 men and 2 women coming over from the mission board. Fengwu saw the 4 people coming over. Fengwu had seen 2 of them before. One was Orlando, and the other was Alice. These two people had a big grudge with Fengwu. Sorry, according to the rules of our Adventurers Guild, a mission can only be taken by one team, unless the person who issued the mission specifically requests that more people can take it. Otherwise, unless the person who took the mission fails in the end, others can take the mission. The receptionist sat here every day and had seen many people. Naturally, there were many people who were looking for trouble. Her face didn't change as she repeated the rules of the Adventurers Guild. They haven't paid the mission fee yet, have they? Alice looked at Fengwu with disdain. She hated Fengwu from the bottom of her heart. First, she used a strange method to freeze her, causing her to almost be taken advantage of by some old perverts on the street. Because of her, she suffered in the final assessment. She, Alice, had never been bullied like this since she was a child. In short, she would not let this Fengwu go. This is the mission fee. Ajur didn't talk at all. He directly took out 10 gold coins and put it on the table. The receptionist counted the gold coins and registered it with their adventurer badge. This mission was taken by Ajur. Originally, in the Adventurers Guild, the mission could be taken in the name of a team or in the name of an individual. It was just that to set up a team, even the smallest team needed 3 people to register. Therefore, Fengwu and Ajur could only take a mission in the name of an individual. At worst, the two of them could do it together and then split the money. Alice, don't worry about them. Although Orlando also wanted Fengwu to die, she knew where this was. People who dared to cause trouble in the Adventurers Guild had never appeared so far. Orlando didn't want to be hated by the staff in the guild, so when Alice still wanted to speak, she directly took her to the front desk to find the receptionist. This is the mission our team wants to take. Orlando took out a mission list. The receptionist didn't say anything and helped them register directly. Orlando took out 10 gold coins and made a registration. The receptionist took the gold coins and quickly helped them record it. Orlando's group of 4 naturally accepted the team quest. The difficulty of this quest was also sea level. However, this quest required them to go to the wild and fight with demonic beasts. It was not like the quest that Agel had accepted, which required pure brain power. Alice stood aside angrily and glared at Fengwu, and the other 2 male members of their team were from the swordsman department. This kind of combination of magician and swordsman was the most common team in the Adventurers Guild, and a team of pure magician and swordsman was relatively rare. The 2 male swordsmen were not interested in this kind of women's war. The reason why they teamed up with Orlando was just that they wanted to complete the mission, and it was more advantageous to form a team. The registration has been completed. I wish you success in your mission. The receptionist smiled and returned the registration badge to Orlando and others. Thank you. Orlando returned a smile and didn't look down on the other party because she was just a receptionist. After taking the mission, the 4 people left the mission hall directly. During this period, they didn't have any communication with Fengwu. Seeing that the annoying people finally left, Ajur frowned. You also pick a mission, and then we can do 2 missions together. Touching the black-haired girl's head, Ajur felt really good. Fengwu was also used to Ajur rubbing her hair. She obediently took out the mission list from the receptionist and began to look at the missions. Fengwu casually selected a mission to eliminate evil in a small village and registered it. The mission chosen was a sea-level mission, and the client was the village chief of a small mountain village. Recently, a strange incident occurred in their village. There were always young girls missing. The village chief organized a lot of people, but they couldn't catch the evildoer. The girls also disappeared, and even their bodies couldn't be seen. No one knew whether they were dead or alive. The desperate cries of the parents of the missing girls could be heard all day long in the village. In order to catch the evildoer and find the missing girls, the village chief and all the villagers in the village gathered 200 gold coins to submit the mission to the Adventurers Guild, hoping that there would be a powerful adventurer who could help them. This mission had just been submitted, and no one had accepted it yet. The main reason was that 200 gold coins in a sea-level mission was really not high. If people wanted to take it, they would take a high-paying job. Regardless of the pay, Fengwu accepted it. After registering, the 2 directly went back to school to find the teacher to ask for leave. Because this mission required them to go far away, the mission location of the 2 missions was not in the central city, but in a small country called Ice Hill Country. This small country was not far from the central city, but it was not under the control of the central city. It was because the mission location of the two missions was in the same country that Fengwu accepted the low-paying job, because it was convenient. As for Fengwu and Ajur's request for leave to do the mission together, the teacher expressed his support. The two went back to the dormitory to pack their things, and Little White and Little Bun were also packed and taken away. This mission might take some time. Fengwu naturally couldn't leave Little Bun and Little White alone in the dormitory. In order to save some time, Little White was first put into Little Bun's spiritual space, and Little Bun was put into Fengwu's spatial ring. They didn't know what method Ajur used, but he got their spatial equipment back from the teacher. Of course, the teacher kept all the items in the equipment and didn't return them together. In addition, the teacher also said that they were not allowed to sell their spatial equipment for money, or else the mission would be considered a failure. This time, the two chose to use the teleportation formation to directly teleport to the border city of Ice Hill Country, Frost City. Ice Hill Country was a country that snowed all year round. The people there wore heavy coats every day, and the beautiful snowy scenery could be seen on the streets every day. At the same time, it was also a heaven for ice magicians, and many ice magicians would choose to live in Ice Hill Country. Using the teleportation formation to go to Frost City required a fee based on the number of people. The teleportation formation could only be activated when 10 people were present, and each person had to pay 100 gold coins for the teleportation formation. This was also the reason why not many people used the teleportation formation every day. After all, not everyone could use 100 gold coins to travel without blinking an eye. Fengwu and Ajur, one wearing a white dress and the other wearing a red magician's robe, were both quite young. They stood by the teleportation formation and waited for people who also needed to use it. Fortunately, after waiting for about half an hour, they finally gathered 10 people. The 10 people were male, female, old, and young, and Fengwu and Ajur were definitely the youngest among them. Because the two of them were young, the other people who used the teleportation formation couldn't help but wonder if these two children were from a noble family who secretly ran out to play. Chapter 57. Fengwu and Ajur didn't mind being scrutinized from time to time. When all 10 of them arrived, the person responsible for activating the teleportation portal inserted a magic core. With a flash of light, the 10 people on the teleportation portal were transported to another country. Frost City was a border city of the Ice Hill Kingdom. Not only did the natives of Frost City live here, but there were also many citizens of other countries who came to Frost City for sightseeing. As soon as they arrived at Frost City, they could feel an icy chill. This feeling of instantly entering winter made them shiver. After the 10 of them left the teleportation portal, they went their separate ways without any communication. Ajur brought Fengwu to find the person who issued the mission first. Although it was written on the mission list that the person who issued the mission was Clara, they all knew that Clara, who was now suspected of murder, couldn't possibly go to the Adventurers Guild to issue a mission. The name Pierre was also written on the contact list. Who was Pierre? He was Clara's childhood friend. When Clara encountered such a big problem, even her biological father wanted to kill her. Only this young man had been helping her all this time. Stepping on the snow, Ajur held Fengwu's cold hand and followed the map to find the real mission issuer, Pierre. The reason why he held Fengwu's hand was not only because he was afraid that she would slip, but also because it was convenient for him to transfer some fire magic energy into her body so that she wouldn't fall ill due to the sudden change in temperature. Ajur was not afraid of the cold because he was a fire magician. Although Fengwu practiced combat aura, her strength was still low, and she didn't have fire magic elements to protect her body like his. In fact, Fengwu wasn't that weak. Since coming to this world, Fengwu had been practicing the technique that her master had taught her. That technique could also produce combat aura in the body. Perhaps it was because of the laws of heaven and earth in this world, but the internal force that Fengwu cultivated could actually automatically transform into combat aura. Although it was a different method of energy, Fengwu's strength was still very strong. Even if she didn't have fire magic to protect her body like Ajur, she could still protect herself with the deep combat aura in her body. However, Ajur didn't know this. Ajur and Fengwu had known each other for so long, but he had never asked about Fengwu's cultivation level. Fengwu was a person who didn't like to talk. If Ajur didn't ask, this girl naturally wouldn't say much. The two young man and woman's hand in hand followed the address to find an ordinary inn to stay. This inn was located in the area where ordinary people lived in Frost City. At first glance, it was obvious that it had been open for many years. The door of the inn was open. Fengwu and Ajur walked into this shabby-looking inn together. "Welcome. Are you here to stay or to eat?" A fat woman greeted them with a smile as soon as she saw them. "We're from the Adventurers Guild. We're here to look for Pierre." Although Ajur had an arrogant temperament, he would still pretend in front of outsiders. At least, people who met him for the first time would think that he was a polite and good young man. The woman was stunned for a moment, then seemed to understand. Although her smile didn't change, there was a hint of worry on her chubby face. "Please wait a moment. I'll call young Master Pierre down." After the fat woman finished speaking, she went up directly. Soon, there was a rush of footsteps. The footsteps were very fast. It was obvious that the owner of the footsteps was in a hurry. As the footsteps approached, a young man dressed in blue appeared in front of Fengwu and Ajur. Although the young man ran in a hurry, he wasn't out of breath. It was obvious that he had practiced fighting energy. At the very least, he was a swordsman. However, the young man's swordsman level shouldn't be very high. After all, he was still young. The young man, Pierre, had rushed down when he heard that people from the Adventurers Guild had come. His eyes were full of hope, but they turned into disappointment when he saw Fengwu and Ajur. "You two are newly registered adventurers, right? You can't take on this mission. You'd better find an easier one." After saying that, Pierre sighed. These two looked to be about 15 years old, and they were even younger than him. What ability could they have to investigate the cause of Madame Erin's death and catch the murderer? Pierre didn't have any hope for Fengwu and Ajur. In his eyes, these two were just rookies. They only wanted to increase their points because the mission reward was high and there was no danger to their lives. Haha, you can't judge a book by its cover. Don't you understand that? I don't think we are the first group of adventurers to come here. Just because the people before us didn't complete this mission doesn't mean we can't. Young Master Ajur, who had always been picky, wasn't used to being picked on by others. He released his magician's pressure. In an instant, Pierre felt a suffocating pressure pressing down on him. Fortunately, it didn't take long for the pressure to recede like the tide. Pierre was horrified. It was simply inconceivable that a young man could release such pressure. Pierre felt that he was nothing compared to the young man in front of him. "It's my fault. I apologize to the two of you." Although he hadn't seen the strength of the young girl, he knew that the young girl wasn't weak. Otherwise, they wouldn't have teamed up to do the mission together. "I accept. Let me introduce myself first. I am an adventurer who accepted the mission. My name is Ajur. This is my friend Fengwu. She also accepted a mission in Frost City, so the two of us came together." Ajur briefly introduced himself and Fengwu. This person named Pierre in front of him was quite interesting. He was crushed by a younger person, but he didn't have any resentment. This made Ajur very satisfied. If the other party had any other ideas, he wouldn't be polite. "Hello, I am Pierre, a good friend of the mission issuer, Miss Clara. This time, because something happened to Clara, she couldn't come to see you in person. She had to ask me to be fully responsible for this mission," Pierre said with some embarrassment. "Young master, please have the two adventurers sit inside. I will go to the kitchen to make some food," the fat woman said with a smile. "Okay, sorry to trouble you, Lam." Pierre patted his head. He hadn't asked them to sit down yet. Lam went to prepare the food. Fengwu and Ajur were led to the sofa and sat down. Pierre also personally prepared black tea for the two of them. Pierre briefly explained his situation. Fengwu and Ajur knew that Pierre's mother and Clara's mother were good friends. Both of them married husbands with similar family backgrounds. Because of the friendship between the two wives, the two families had always maintained a good relationship. Chapter 58. Unfortunately, the good times didn't last long. When Pierre was 12 years old, something happened to his family. Except for the small, run-down hotel that he was running now, all his other properties were taken away. Although Pierre's family went bankrupt, the relationship between the two families wasn't affected at all. They were still very close. Clara's parents also gave their family a lot of help. That was until the appearance of a woman named Dusha. Her appearance destroyed the relationship between Wendea and Madame Marlene. The relationship between the two husband and wife was broken and could no longer be salvaged. Clara also fell out with her father and moved out of the house with her mother. Pierre's mother died of illness more than a year ago. As a junior, Pierre naturally couldn't persuade Wendea and Madame Marlene to continue their relationship. He could only comfort the sad Clara. Until one day 3 months ago, Madame Marlene died in her own villa, and the suspect was actually her own daughter. This case caused a huge uproar at that time. There weren't many people in this world who really believed this result. Most people suspected that the murderer should be Wendea and Dusha. But suspicion could only be suspicion. There was no evidence to support this statement. The murder weapon was found in Clara's room, and it had Clara and Madame Marlene's sin on it. Both Wendea and Dusha had their maids as witnesses, proving that they had been staying in their house and didn't go out at all. So there wasn't enough evidence to treat them as suspects. Clara, as the biggest suspect, was taken to the arbitration tribunal to await the results of the arbitration. As Clara's childhood friend, how could Pierre watch as his little childhood friend was arrested and dealt with as the murderer of her mother? So after seeing Clara, the two discussed going to the Adventurers Guild to sign up for such a mission. They couldn't find the murderer, and the people in the arbitration tribunal couldn't find any evidence favorable to Clara. The two's last hope was naturally placed on the Adventurers Guild. But to their disappointment, the people in the Adventurers Guild who accepted the mission also couldn't find any evidence favorable to Clara. The murderer was still at large. Just when the two were about to be disappointed, they welcomed a juror. After listening to Pierre's explanation, a juror had a specific understanding of this mission. The two teenagers talked for a while, and then La made a lot of delicious food and put it on the table. Although their small hotel was shabby, and the people who stayed there weren't rich, the business was still good. It wasn't to the point where it couldn't be operated at all. In addition, Lam had good cooking skills, so he could attract a lot of returning customers. Fengwu sat at the side and listened to them talk the whole time. She didn't say much other than eating something. Pierre, can you take us to the house where Madame Marin was killed? A juror planned to get down to business after eating and drinking to his heart's content. Of course. That house has been empty ever since Madame Marlene's accident. Because of the murder case, the house has been sealed. If you want to enter, you'll have to use some means. Pierre seemed to have known that a juror would have such a request, and he wasn't surprised at all. A juror didn't ask what method he needed to use. He just nodded. After resting for a while, the three of them walked towards the house where Madame Marlene was killed. Pierre originally wanted Lam to get a carriage, but a juror refused on the grounds of digestion. The three of them walked quietly on the snow-covered street. The temperature of Frost City was much lower than that of the Central City. There weren't many people on the street. Many people who came to the Ice Mound Kingdom were adventurers who had taken on missions, or came here to travel or do business. There weren't many people who really came here to have fun. Naturally, there weren't many people on the street. Fengwu and the others walked all the way, and only saw a few people walking on the street. The shops on the street were open, but there didn't seem to be much business. The business of your Frost City is so slow. I don't know how these shops continue to operate, a juror said as he looked at the deserted shops in Frost City. You misunderstand. There are usually a lot of people on the streets of Frost City. It's just that something big happened recently, so most people want to watch the show. Pierre only smiled when he heard a juror's words, and then said, You misunderstand. There are usually a lot of people on the streets of Frost City. A juror raised his eyebrows. What's so interesting? So many people went. He was someone who couldn't stay idle. Something that could attract so many people's attention couldn't be a small matter. If he had time, he would definitely go and join in the fun. It seems to be related to sacred beasts. I heard that some time ago, an expert stole a sacred beast egg from the spirit world. But the sacred beast egg was lost when passing through the spirit world's passage. At that time, many people saw that scene. In order to find the sacred beast egg, many people went to the place where the spatial passage appeared to search. That's why there are so few people on the street. In fact, there are still many people in Frost City. Sacred beast egg? A juror's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. There was actually news of a sacred beast egg in such a place. A juror almost thought that he hadn't woken up and heard wrongly. There were 3 types of magical beasts in this world. The first type was magical beasts, the second type was sacred beasts, and the third type was divine beasts. Except for the first type, which was more common, the other 2 types were uncommon beasts. Sacred beasts lived in the spirit world. They generally wouldn't come to the human world to live. Unless there was a strong person who had a contract with a sacred beast, it was not easy to see a sacred beast. Sacred beasts and sacred beasts were the same. They both lived in the spirit world. The spirit world was a paradise for all beasts. There were many beast races there, and they were all beasts with noble bloodlines. Although sacred beasts lived in the spirit world like sacred beasts were of a higher level than sacred beasts. There were only a few known sacred beasts in the spirit world, and each of them was an overlord in the spirit world. Humans could form a partnership contract with sacred beasts, or even sacred beasts through their own strength. From then on, the beasts would become the most loyal partners of humans. When the human partner died of old age, the contracted beast would return to the spirit world to start a new life. In short, humans could use their own strength to form a contract with a beast that they could subdue. If their strength was not enough, then sorry, they had to find a low-level magical beast to play with. Because if one wanted to subdue sacred beasts or sacred beasts, they could only go to the spirit world through the spatial passage. Those who could go to the spirit world were all experts. Hearing Pierre say that someone had gotten an egg from the spirit world, Ajur felt somewhat ashamed. The sacred beasts of the spirit world viewed their children as more important than their eyeballs. If you wanted to tame a sacred beast, you could use your own strength to subdue it. You could achieve your goal by stealing its eggs. Ajailu didn't appreciate such people. Chapter 59. If the egg really was stolen from the spirit world, the elders of the stolen race should have come to negotiate. The spirit world's beast saints were all very human. Many of them could transform into human form. Humans and the spirit world's sacred beasts had always had a good relationship. If the spirit world's sacred beasts had come to intervene, the Ice Hill Kingdom's people would have helped to send the egg back. Bai Jing had gone to the spirit world to steal the egg. That's what's strange. It's been some time since the egg fell near our Frost City, but no beast from the spirit world has come out to negotiate with our king. Everyone suspects that the egg might be some rare holy beast. That's why no elders in the clan have come forward. Because there were no living beasts in the family, naturally no elders would come. The other sacred beasts would not meddle in other people's business. I see. Ajur nodded. As they spoke, they had already arrived in front of a villa. This villa wasn't big. 2-story villas weren't uncommon in the city. There were many flowers in the courtyard that were suitable for growing in the Ice Hill Kingdom. The scenery in the courtyard wasn't bad. We have to go in from the other side. The front has been sealed. Unless the case is settled, no one is allowed to enter unless they are from the arbitration tribunal. Pierre had always worked hard for his childhood sweetheart. Now, in order to save his childhood sweetheart's life, he was willing to go against the arbitration tribunal. The 3 of them went in through a small door at the back of the villa. There were very few people on the street. No one would notice their actions. Pierre brought Ajur and Fengwu directly to Madame Marin's room. Madame Marin's room was very big. When the door was opened, they could feel some dust in the air. It seemed that it had not been cleaned for a long time. After Ajur entered the room, he looked around. He found a lot of blood on Madame Marin's bed. This should be the scene of Madame Marin's murder. Look, someone else is here. No one has been here for a long time. Will Clara come back? Fengwu suddenly heard a voice that sounded like a child's voice. Probably not. Those people think Clara is the murderer. They will definitely kill Clara. The voice sounded angry. Those people are so bad. After Clara and the others left, no one helped me loosen the soil. I really want Clara to come back. Then, there was a lot of chatter. It was like a wet market. Fengwu was not surprised by this scene at all. She knew that this was the sound of the spiritual plants nearby. Fengwu could hear the voices of many creatures in nature. Plants, animals, wind, and fire could be heard as long as she wanted to. In the past, when she was on Mount Yuehua, she could only hear the voices of small animals and plants. Ever since she came to this continent, Fengwu's ability had improved. Naturally, she could hear more voices. After coming to this world for a few months, Fengwu had already gotten used to controlling her ability. Unless she wanted to, she wouldn't hear the voices of those creatures. This time, in order to find the murderer of Madame Marin, Fengwu had been thinking of a way along the way. Her method was very simple. Since there were no witnesses, the flowers and plants in the courtyard must know something. She planned to ask those flowers and plants, hoping that they could help a juror. So after arriving at Madame Marin's villa, she released her ability and focused on listening to the conversations of the people around her. Ajur and Pierre were still looking around to see if they had missed anything. Fengwu went downstairs alone. She wanted to ask the flowers in the courtyard if they had seen the real murderer. Ajur and Pierre naturally saw Fengwu going downstairs alone, but they didn't care. They thought that she wanted to walk around casually. They didn't know that Fengwu wanted to go out to listen to the news, especially Pierre. Along the way, he rarely heard Fengwu speak and didn't see her show any amazing abilities. He thought that she was just a little girl following Ajur to do missions. Maybe she was Ajur's little girlfriend. Along the way, she observed that the two didn't seem to be lovers. Fortunately, Pierre was anxious to save his childhood sweetheart, so she didn't have much time to guess the relationship between the two. After going downstairs, Fengwu went directly to the garden. The herb garden wasn't very big, but it was full of flowers that could bloom in cold weather. There was a big banyan tree in the garden. Judging from its age, it was the oldest plant in the courtyard. It was at least 100 years old. Among the trees, it was naturally young. Fengwu went directly to the tree and stroked its bark with her small hand. Hello. Fengwu's consciousness was clearly transmitted into the tree. Hello, human girl. I didn't expect that there would be a human who could communicate with us plants. What a magical little girl. The tree's voice sounded like that of an adult man. It was very friendly. The young girl seemed to have received encouragement. On her expressionless face, her pair of black, gem-like bright eyes revealed a touch of happiness. My name used to be Sky Blue. Now, I'm Fengwu. I'm here with a juror to investigate the cause of Madame Marin's death. On the day of Madame Marin's death, did you see anyone enter this villa? Although Fengwu didn't discuss the case with Pierre and the others along the way, she heard a lot from the side. She knew that Ajur's most serious problem was that no one had seen the murderer. That was why Fengwu asked the big banyan tree this question. For some reason, when facing humans, Fengwu couldn't tell what they were thinking. However, when communicating with plants and animals, she could clearly feel their emotions. This feeling of not having to guess and not having to think, Fengwu liked it very much. You're talking about that day. That night, a strange person came here. However, that person wasn't human. She was wearing a human skin. What a strange person. The big banyan tree thought for a moment and recalled the scene that day. As a big banyan tree that could only live in this small courtyard, there weren't many interesting things in his memory. That day's incident was one of them. A person wearing a human skin? There was a lot of information in this sentence. Tongwu couldn't understand. Yes, and she was wearing a woman's skin. That skin was prettier than Madame Marin's. Although the big banyan tree had lived for more than 100 years, it hadn't seen many women. Although there were beautiful people, they weren't outstanding. Madame Marin was considered pretty good among ordinary people, but compared to the real beauties, she was still lacking. Of course, the big banyan tree didn't know this. It couldn't leave the courtyard as a tree, so how could it see a beauty? Fengwu thanked the big banyan tree and turned to go upstairs. Chapter 60. In the room, Ajur and Pierre were looking for clues. However, the room had been searched more than once, and all the useful clues had been taken away by the people from the arbitration tribunal. After working for a while, they did not find anything useful. Just as Ajur and Pierre were about to go to Clara's room to take a look, Fengwu pushed the door open and came in. Xiao Wu, you're back. He was not dissatisfied that Fengwu did not stay to help. Ajur was very confident in his own strength. He could find clues and complete the mission alone. The expressionless Fengwu girl first looked at Ajur with a pair of pure eyes, then said, on the day Madame Marlene died, someone came here. It was a guy wearing a woman's skin. What did that mean? Pierre and Ajur felt that 3 big check marks had appeared above their heads. Fortunately, Ajur's IQ had never been his weakness. You mean, The one who killed Madame Marlene was not a human, but a creature who lived in the human world and wore a human skin? Fortunately, this was the world of MCMAU. Anything could happen. There were a few demons who did evil in human skin, so Ajur could understand Fengwu's meaning so easily. Although Fengwu heard the words of the great banyan tree, she did not understand what it meant. How could she explain it? Fortunately, Ajur understood it himself. Ajur was so smart that he could even think of something like this. She didn't even understand what he was saying. The girl's big black eyes flashed with a trace of worship, which made Ajur feel very happy. He had said that he was the smartest. Pierre was originally confused, but after Ajur's explanation, he understood. But there were still some things he could not figure out, such as, Miss Fengwu, how did you know this? Even the arbitration tribunal could not find out, so how did the girl in front of him know? It was too strange. Fengwu bit her lip and didn't say anything. She lowered her head, revealing her dark head. This reaction made Pierre want to shout, "What the fuck? Girl, I didn't bully you. Can't you see the look in the eyes of your little boyfriend next to you? He's about to eat him up." Fengwu lowered her head. She didn't know whether she should say it or not. Her master had said that she couldn't tell anyone that she could hear the little things. Otherwise, she would be in danger. The little girl didn't know what to do. She could only lower her head and remain silent. Just as she was feeling vexed, she felt a warm and big hand caressing her head, just like how her master would caress her head. Fengwu looked up and saw Ajur smiling brighter than the sun. You don't have to say anything. If Xiaowu doesn't want to say anything, then don't say anything. Ajur was acting like a gentle big brother right now, which was completely different from his usual arrogant self. Fengwu felt warm in her heart, but she was also not used to it. She revealed a shy smile. Ajur couldn't help rubbing her little head again. How could she be so cute? Don't be sad. If you don't want to say it, I won't ask. Pierre was a little embarrassed. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have asked. Look at how he had attracted the little girl. I'm not sad. Fengwu had always been a very strong child. She always listened to her master and never cried. Her master had said that crying was the behavior of the weak. The strong people didn't cry. Fengwu had always wanted to be as strong as her master, so she never cried. People would only cry when they were sad. Therefore, Fengwu was never sad. She was a strong person who would never cry. Well, I'm not sad. Pierre didn't argue with her. If she wasn't sad, then she wasn't sad. Let's go. Let's get out of here first. There's finally some progress in the case. Ajur held Fengwu's little hand and asked Pierre to leave together. The three of them left the small villa that was sealed off, their hearts full of doubts. Back at the small hotel, Pierre arranged a room for the two of them. Ram also thoughtfully prepared a lot of delicious food for the three of them. Ram, there seems to be more people coming to stay in the hotel recently. As the owner of the hotel, Pierre naturally knew how the business of the hotel was. Recently, the number of people coming to stay in the hotel had suddenly increased. Even the other hotels were full, which was very unusual. Yes, they should all be here for the sacred beast egg, Ram said indifferently, his hands not stopping at all as he placed the cutlery. A lot of people have come to Frost City recently? Because there weren't many people on the street, Ajur didn't know about this. Yes, a lot of people have come. Although I don't know what they are here for, there have been a lot of people in the past 2 days. Adventurers from many countries have come. Pierre had been wondering about this for a long time. He thought that Ajur would know something, but he didn't expect that this guy also didn't know anything. Fengwu lowered her head and ate. Ram's bone soup was very delicious, and the food was also very delicious. Fengwu showed a happy expression as she ate. Ajur only took a glance at Fengwu and knew that Fengwu liked these dishes very much. Although there was no expression on her little face, he could see the good luck and happiness in it. Boss, make some food and bring a large cup of ale over. A tall man came down from the guest room upstairs. The man carried a big sword on his back and was dressed in ordinary clothes. He didn't look like a rich man. Okay, I'll prepare it for you right away. Pierre immediately responded with a smile. Ram went to the kitchen to prepare the food. Because the business of the small hotel wasn't very good, Ram and Pierre were usually very busy, so they didn't ask anyone to help them. It was just that the number of people staying in the inn had suddenly increased in the past 2 days. The business of the inn, which was originally not very good, had suddenly improved. Even the guest rooms, which had never been half full before, were now more than half full. Rum went to work. As the boss, Pierre naturally couldn't ignore the business of the hotel. He always had to leave someone to look after the hotel, so Pierre didn't eat with Fengwu and the others. Instead, he stood behind the counter alone. More and more customers came downstairs to eat. Fortunately, Ram was fast enough, and they didn't have to wait too long to prepare the food that the customers wanted to eat. After working for more than an hour, it was time for dinner. When Pierre finished his work, Fengwu and the others had already eaten and drunk. Not only that, Ajur also asked the customers in the hotel about the purpose of so many people coming to Frost City. Fortunately, this was not a secret, and it was easy to find out. At this moment, in Pierre's study, Ajur was telling Fengwu and Pierre what he had heard. It turned out that a mysterious light had suddenly appeared in the area of Frost City recently. Some people suspected that an ancient mage's tomb had appeared. That was why so many adventurers had come. These people all wanted to find the treasure left behind by the ancient mage. Chapter 61. The Tomb of the Ancient Magician? Pierre was shocked when he heard the news. He never thought that this would be the reason for so many adventurers to gather here. Interesting. First, the sacred beast egg fell nearby. Now, even the tomb of the ancient magician has appeared. Two major events happened in Frost City at the same time. I don't believe it's a coincidence. Pierre nodded. It was true. Frost City was just a small border city. It was too much of a coincidence for two major events to happen in such a small city. Whether someone deliberately designed it or it's really a coincidence, it has nothing to do with us. What we have to do is to find the murderer as soon as possible to prove Clara's innocence and rescue her. Although the tomb of the ancient magician was really tempting, Clara's life was more important to Pierre. Everything else was trash in his eyes. Ajur nodded and did not speak, but he also agreed with Pierre. He did not forget that he was here for a mission. Let's get back to the main topic. The clues that Xiao Wu found in Madame Marin's villa this afternoon have finally given us a direction to investigate. The news that Fengwu brought was very useful. Ajur already had a plan in mind to rescue Clara. The news that Miss Fengwu inquired did not indicate who the murderer was. She only knew that it was a guy in a woman's skin. She didn't even know the person's true identity. I suspect that it might be Madame Tussaud. Apart from the new president and Madame Tussaud, who else could have a grudge against Madame Marin? When Clara was locked up in the arbitration tribunal, Wendy could not wait to marry Madame Tussaud. Now that his wife was dead and his daughter was in trouble, he still had the mood to marry a wife. This made Pierre, who only had some resentment towards Wenda, feel that his character was very shameful. Madame Tussaud? She became a madam so soon. Ajur curled his lips disdainfully. He really did not have a good impression of Wenda, who did not even care about his wife and daughter. Pierre sighed helplessly. He did not know how to evaluate Wenda. Before meeting Madame Tussaud, he was a very good man. But since Madame Tussaud came, he had become a scumbag. How could men be so fickle? Pierre began to doubt human nature. What kind of person is that Madame Tussaud? I've only seen Madame Tusha twice. The impression she gives others is that she's a gentle woman. However, her heart is definitely not as gentle and demure as she appears to be. How could a truly gentle and kind woman steal someone else's husband? Is there a way to meet Madame Tussaud? Sure. 2 days later is the birthday banquet of the city lord's daughter. At that time, all the slightly famous people in the city will attend. I will also go. You and Miss Fengwu can come with me. Fengwu stood silently at the side and listened. Unlike other girls who tried to make their presence known, she just stood there quietly. If Ajur didn't know that this girl was listening to them, he would have thought that she was in a daze. After discussing the operation 2 days later, the three of them returned to their rooms to rest. After returning to the room, Fengwu released Little Bowsy and Little White. Little White was already unhappy after being locked up for an entire day. When he came out, he burst out in tears. He angrily made his presence known for a whole quarter of an hour. In the end, Fengwu hugged him and coaxed him for a long time before little Baozi stopped crying. Little Baozi who cried until he hiccuped. "Mommy is too bad. Always locking me up. Bad, bad." After coaxing little Baozi, Little White carried little Baozi and walked around the room to coax him. Fengwu looked at her own mission in the room. Other than a juror, she also had a mission. It was a mission to eliminate evil. Fengwu planned to go for this mission tomorrow. She already understood the mission's content. It was to find the bad guys who kidnapped those girls, kill them, and then save those girls. After studying the mission, Fengwu took a hot bath and had a good sleep. The next morning, Fengwu got up very early. Little White carried little Baozi and followed Fengwu downstairs. After what happened yesterday, little Baozi would rather die than go into the interspatial ring. If she let him in, he would cry until he died. Fengwu had no choice but to go downstairs with Little White and Little Baozi. Seeing Fengwu suddenly go downstairs with a nanny beast and Little Baozi, Lamu and Pierre were startled. After asking about Little Baozi's identity, Lamu and Pierre came back to their senses after a long time. How could such a young child be a mother? What was wrong with this world? Of course, no one answered his question. Because they had to wait for the banquet 2 days later, Fengwu and a juror decided to go and complete Fengwu's mission first. Fengwu's mission seemed to be simple, but wasn't it just fighting? It was much easier than using one's brain, and it didn't take much time. Because Fengwu and a juror were going to do the mission, it was naturally inconvenient to take little Baozi with them. Little Baozi and Little White were left in the shop under the care of Pierre and Lamu. North of Frost City, there was a small village with thousands of people. The villagers in the village made a living by growing snow crystal fruit. Snow crystal fruit was a specialty of the Aishjo Kingdom, and it only grew in the Aishjo Kingdom. Snow crystal fruit was not eaten directly, but it was used to make grain wine. Wine merchants from other countries often came to Frost City to buy snow crystal fruit. The sales of snow crystal fruit were very good, and the villagers lived a good life. Even if they were not very rich, there were no problems with their lives. However, some time ago, their lives fell from heaven to hell. There were constantly young girls going missing in the village. The village chief arranged for many young and powerful men to patrol the village, but the young girls were still going missing. This made the village chief so anxious that his hair almost turned white. The village had no choice but to pool 200 gold coins to hire a powerful adventurer to catch the evil murderer. When Fengwu and a juror arrived at the small village, their arrival immediately attracted the attention of the villagers. Because of the disappearance of the girls, the villagers were very resistant to outsiders. Once outsiders entered the village, they would immediately be alerted. "Who are you? What do you want to do in our village?" The person who asked was a woman. The woman's eyes were full of vigilance. It was obvious that she was very resistant to outsiders. The surrounding villagers did not look good either. A few of them had already taken out their weapons. Because of the continuous disappearance of the girls, the villagers had long been on guard. "We are adventurers. Your village issued a mission in the Adventurers Guild, right? We accepted this mission and came here." A juror was used to pretending in front of outsiders, and this time, he was quite good at it. He was simply a cultured and elegant young man. Chapter 62. You've accepted a mission? The woman exclaimed in disbelief. How could this be? Such a small child actually accepted our mission. What can such a small child do? That's right. I thought it would be a powerful swordsman who accepted our village's mission. What should we do now? 2 young children came. What can they do? Let them go back. Not only did they fail to save others, but they also brought harm to these 2 children. The surrounding villagers discussed loudly. They thought they would be the hope of saving the village and would be powerful adventurers. They didn't expect it to be 2 young children. The difference was too big, and the villagers couldn't accept it. The village chief is here. The village chief is here. There were children calling out from behind the adults. The adults all moved aside to let the village chief come over. After the crowd made way, a white-haired old man appeared in front of Fengwu and a juror. The old man looked very thin and weak. He wore a loose white robe and held a black wooden cane in his hand. He looked like a respectable elder. 2 young people, welcome to our village. Come to my house and have a seat. The old village chief didn't say anything unpleasant to the two. Instead, he led them into the village chief's house. The village chief's house was bigger than the other villagers' houses. It seemed to be of a higher class. They followed the village chief into the house. The village chief's wife had passed away long ago. Now, the village chief's two daughters-in-law were taking care of the family. After bringing the two into the house, the village chief asked the two daughters-in-law to prepare lunch. The two daughters-in-law obediently went to the kitchen to prepare lunch. As for the village chief's two sons, they didn't seem to be at home. "Hello, adventurers. I'm the village chief of this village. My name is Brew." The village chief's eyes were filled with deep sorrow. It was obvious that this kind old man was very busy because of the disappearance of the young girl. "Hello, village chief. I am a D-rank adventurer from the Adventurers Guild. This is my friend, and the person who accepted this mission. Her name is Fengwu." Since Fengwu was not good at socializing, Ajur was usually the one doing the diplomatic work. He was also used to speaking on behalf of Fengwu. After the old man introduced himself, Ajur naturally explained the situation between Fengwu and himself. When the old village head heard that Fengwu was the one who accepted this mission, his expression stiffened. It seemed that he did not expect that such a delicate little girl would accept such a dangerous mission. "Adventurers, what happened in our village is very unusual. You are still young. I'm afraid you can't deal with that demon." The old village chief, like the rest of the villagers, also felt that they were too young. How could such young children accomplish the tasks of their village? However, the village chief was a person who had been a village chief for many years. His words were more tactful, unlike the villagers outside who spoke harshly. "Village chief, do you not believe us?" Ajur suddenly laughed. His laughter was wanton and arrogant. Seeing the sudden change in the young man's temperament, village chief Brew did not know how to react. He was clearly such a gentle young man just a moment ago. How did he become so arrogant now? "You are too young." This was what the village chief wanted to say the most, but he could not say it out loud. He did not want to hurt the young children's hearts. "I will complete this mission." Fengwu looked at the old village chief seriously. She spoke very seriously. Facing the young girl's sincere gaze, the old village chief could not bear to refuse. "Very dangerous little girl." The village chief persuaded the young girl in front of him to change her mind. "I am very powerful." Fengwu looked at the village chief stubbornly and said, "This?" The village chief wanted to persuade him, but was interrupted by Ajur. "Don't worry, village chief. Fengwu and I are not ordinary adventurers. We will definitely help your village," Ajur said, not allowing for rejection. The old village head saw that no matter how he persuaded the two young people in front of him, they still insisted on doing this mission. Forget it, he would not persuade them anymore. At most, he would send some more young men in the village to help them. They could not do this mission without doing it. If something happened to such a young child, it would be a pity. The old village chief's heart was good. Although Fengwu and Ajur did not listen to his advice, the old village chief was only a little helpless. He did not feel that the two of them did not know what was good for them. The village chief's two wives were not bad at cooking. Although they could not compare to Lamu, Lamu was originally a cook, so it was only right that his cooking skills were better. While they were eating, the village chief's two sons returned. The two of them looked to be in their 40s and were still holding farming tools in their hands. It was obvious that they had just returned from the fields. The village chief also had 3 grandchildren and 2 granddaughters. Ever since something happened in the village chief had sent all the children to his 2 wives' homes. It was safer to leave the village. The village chief's son and wife also doubted Fengwu and Ajur's strength. Fortunately, their family was well educated and did not casually say anything to offend others. After eating, Fengwu asked to go around the village to take a look. Ajur naturally went with them, and the village chief sent a clever little family to follow them all the way. The child who led the way was at most 10 years old. He was a rather cute little boy. The little boy was very curious about Fengwu and Ajur, but he didn't ask anything. No wonder the village head asked him to lead the way. This child was indeed very sensible. There were many ice crystal fruit trees planted in the village. Other than the ice crystal fruit, the village also planted a kind of fruit that grew in winter. This kind of fruit was the main dish on every family's table. It was very delicious and filled with hunger. There were also many trees planted in the village. These trees were all bare without any leaves, making them look even more bleak. There were also some flowers that were commonly seen in the ice season blooming on the snow. These flowers were not expensive, but they were also fragrant. Fengwu and Ajur followed the child around the village. Ajur and the child leading the way would occasionally see Fengwu walk over and caress the bare trees, then walk a distance and touch another tree. Ajur did not understand what Fengwu was doing, and the child naturally did not understand either. In short, Fengwu kept touching the trees and occasionally touched the flowers. After circling around the village, she returned to the village chief's house. The village head didn't have much hope in the first place, so he didn't ask about the investigation when Fengwu and the others came back. If they could find out who the kidnappers were by simply walking around the village, they would have found the culprit long ago. They wouldn't have had to spend so much money to hire someone from the Adventurers Guild. That person is very strange. The girls who were taken away were all brought into the mountains. Fengwu suddenly said. The old village chief stared with his eyes wide open. Bring them into the mountains. This is impossible. There are ice and snow bears living in the mountains, and no one can go deep into the forest. We have already searched the periphery, but we did not find anything. Deeper inside, Jalal. Let's go into the mountains together. Fengwu bit her lips. The village chief did not believe her, so Fengwu naturally felt it. She wanted to find the missing girls to prove that she was not lying. Chapter 63. Fengwu's stubborn gaze made it impossible for Ajur to refuse. Plus, he'd never thought of refusing the young girl's request in the first place. No, you can't go. It's too dangerous. Those snow bears are the overlords of the mountains. The old village chief said agitatedly, desperately trying to change the two young people's minds. Don't worry, village chief, we'll be fine. Ajur smiled carelessly, his expression full of confidence. Although Fengwu didn't say anything, her serious gaze said everything. Unable to stop Fengwu and Ajur, the village chief could only watch as the two young people went into the mountains to their deaths. Yes, in the village chief's eyes, these two young people who didn't listen to his advice were already dead people with one foot in the grave. No one had ever come back alive from the depths of the mountains. Not only did the village chief not believe it, but even the villagers who heard of this didn't believe that the two young people could walk out of the mountains alive. Fengwu and Ajur entered the large snowy mountain beside the village amidst the villagers' voices of pity and dissuasion. The mountain was covered in a white glow. Apart from a few tenacious trees and wild flowers and grass, most of the trees were bare. Only a few loose leaves still hung on the tree branches. A strong gust of wind would cause the already shaky leaves to immediately fall from the tree branches. The magical beasts that lived in the Icefall Kingdom were all ice-type magical beasts, such as the extreme ice bird, snow bear, ice tiger, ice leopard, and so on. This mountain was the snow bear's territory. Of course, the snow bear wasn't the only magical beast on this mountain. There were many other magical beasts that could adapt to the cold weather, but they weren't as strong as the snow bear, which was a natural ice-type magical beast. Fengwu walked in front to lead the way while Ajur followed behind. Fengwu reached out to touch the tree branches from time to time and then walked in a certain direction after confirming the direction. Ajur's IQ wasn't low to begin with. When he saw Fengwu's actions, he naturally guessed that Fengwu might have some kind of innate ability that allowed her to communicate with these plants. Xiaowu, can you hear these plants talk? Although Ajur was asking a question, he didn't seem to have any doubts about it. Fengwu lowered her head, leaving Ajur with a black crown. If Ajur knew, would he think that she was a monster? Would he hate her? Fengwu was a little flustered. Ajur was her good friend. She didn't want Ajur to hate her. Ajur rudely flicked Fengwu's head. Fengwu raised her head in pain, her small face full of complaints. What are you thinking? It's not a bad thing to be able to understand the language of plants. In this world, people with this kind of ability are all favored by heaven and earth. Many people can't even imagine it. Ajur really wanted to know which family this little girl came from. She clearly had such a good innate ability, but she was so careful to hide it. Could it be that her family didn't tell her about the rarity and preciousness of innate abilities? Really? Fengwu's eyes were as bright as the stars in the sky. If one looked closely, one could see the caution in her eyes. Ajur sighed. Just whose family did such a simple-minded girl come from? He really wanted to meet her parents. It really wasn't easy to raise a girl like this. Of course it's true. Your ability isn't strange. No one will dislike you because of your ability. In our school, there are many people who have innate abilities like you. Some of them can fly, some of them can shield the ground, and some of them are born with boundless strength. In short, there are many kinds of innate abilities. Your innate ability is a support-type innate ability. Although it's not used for combat, it's still very powerful in other areas. What Ajur didn't say was that innate abilities that weren't used for combat were generally not valued, unless the innate ability was very useful. Although Fengwu's innate ability couldn't be used against enemies, it was very useful when investigating something. It was much better than those useless innate abilities. Fengwu's eyes were shining. Ajur's words had undoubtedly opened up a new world for her. Fengwu only knew that this world was very strange. Fire could be created out of thin air, and strange spells could be used to attack. Fengwu already thought that this world was very strange. She didn't expect that there were people in this world who were born with special abilities like her. In the past, when she was at Mount Yuehua, because she was special and no one else had that kind of ability, her master didn't let her tell others. She even told her to carefully hide her ability. Because of this, she didn't have a single friend since she was young. No, she had friends. The small animals on the mountain were all her friends. She just didn't have any human friends. Moreover, the children at the foot of the mountain were all bad children. They would throw stones at her and speak ill of her. She didn't like them and didn't want to be friends with them. Now that her ability was no longer special, and Ajur told her that there were other people who had the same strange ability as her, she was no longer a strange child, right? Fengwu felt that the stone that had been pressing on her heart since she was young seemed to have been removed. Her whole body relaxed. Her originally expressionless face showed that she was in a very good mood. This girl was really naive. Her future husband couldn't be too smart. Otherwise, with this girl's IQ, she would be cheated until there was nothing left of her. He suddenly had a feeling that his daughter had grown up and was going to get married. Fengwu was in a good mood now that the knot in her heart had been untied. She led Ajur all the way to the depths of the mountain. As they entered the depths of the mountain, a snow bear would appear in front of them from time to time. Ajur was already prepared for battle, but he didn't expect a magical scene to appear. Those snow bears that were originally aggressive when they saw the intruders were instantly as obedient as kittens when they saw Fengwu. Ajur was so shocked that his jaw almost fell to the ground. He thought that there would be a big battle, but he didn't expect it to be a day trip. Because of Fengwu, who had an extremely good affinity with magical beasts, the two of them were not only unobstructed along the way, but also received a warm welcome from the snow bears. They even picked 2 snow fruits that grew in the depths of the mountain for Fengwu. Ajur naturally knew about this snow fruit. It was a very good thing for ice magicians. Eating one could increase one's affinity with ice magic elements. It was a good thing that was hard to come by for ice magicians on ice transport ships. It was said that this fruit only grew in the Ice Hill country, but it didn't grow much in the country. Moreover, the place where the snow fruit grew was guarded by powerful magical beasts. Ordinary magicians had no way of picking the fruit. Chapter 64. Ajur didn't expect that he would be able to obtain such a rare treasure for an ice magician just by accompanying Fengwu to climb a mountain. Although it was useless to him, he knew that someone would definitely be interested in it. When the time came, he could ruthlessly extort a sum of money from that person. Just thinking about it made him happy. Fengwu put her snow fruit into her space ring, only to see Ajur holding the other one in a daze. Fengwu pulled him back to reality. After regaining his senses, Ajur immediately hid the snow fruit in his space ring. Passing through the ice and snow, the two continued to walk forward until they reached a hidden cave. Fengwu then stopped. The entrance of the cave was very small, and there were many branches and weeds at the entrance's cover. If Fengwu hadn't asked the trees in the forest for information, it would have been absolutely not easy to find such a small cave in the Mang Mang Mountain. The two cleared away the things blocking the entrance of the cave, and then walked into the cave one after the other. Fearing that the murderer of the young girl was still hiding inside, a juror volunteered to walk in front. As soon as they entered the cave, the thick smell of blood was almost suffocating. A juror frowned and used his sleeve to cover his mouth and nose. Fengwu also took out a handkerchief to cover her nose. The handkerchief had the fragrance of jasmine, which made her nose feel a little better. The light in the cave was too dark, and they couldn't see the situation inside. A juror used his fire ability to create a large fireball to light up the cave. Under the illumination of the firelight, they could finally see the situation inside the cave. From the outside, the cave didn't look big, but it was a completely different world. There was a bottomless passage inside the cave, and they didn't know where it led to. The smell of blood was coming from inside the cave. What a strong smell of blood. It seems that we found the right place. And Fengwu responded, not taking off the handkerchief covering her nose and mouth. Let's go inside and take a look. Be careful later. If anything happens, run. Okay? A juror felt like he was about to become an old mother. He was afraid that this silly girl would not even be able to outrun her when the time came. Fengwu nodded, still not saying anything. A juror knew that it was enough for her to hear him, and he didn't intend to force her to speak. The fireball that a juror conjured with magic flew in front of them as if it was leading the way. Fengwu followed behind a juror, and the two walked carefully in the cave. They had thought that the cave would be filled with traps, but they had been in the tunnel for a few minutes and had not encountered anything. The deeper they went, the thicker the smell of blood. 10 minutes later, the two of them finally reached the innermost part of the tunnel. Walking out of the narrow tunnel, they were greeted by a cave that was even larger than the one outside. In the center of the cave, there was actually a blood pool. Beside the blood pool, there were dried corpses of young girls. The dried corpses were densely packed throughout the cave. Simply looking at them would make anyone's hair stand on end. A cold wind blew in the cave, and one could hear the cries of young girls. A juror knew that those were the voices of young girls. Unfortunately, she was not a necromancer, so she could not purify the resentment of these young girls and let them reincarnate. On the continent, necromancers were a special group of magicians. They could use the undead to fight, and they could also purify the undead. Necromancers were divided into white magicians and black magicians. White magicians purified the undead and communicated with them to strengthen their magic. Black magicians controlled the resentment and corpses to fight for them. Dark necromancers were very strong. They had the most evil power in the world and were the common enemy of all magicians on the continent. White necromancers had always maintained respect for the undead and were very respected on the continent. Wait for me here. I'll go take a look first. A juror instructed Fengwu and walked towards the blood pool. This was the place where the murderer disposed of the corpses, so there must be some clues left behind. At this moment, a juror completely did not expect that the world Fengwu saw was completely different from the world he saw. A juror saw a blood pool filled with dried corpses, but Fengwu saw a cave full of women. As for the other things, they were all blocked by the women, so she could not see them at all. I want to go home. Dad, I want to go home. Woo-woo-woo, revenge. I want revenge. Kill him, that demon. Mom, I want Mom. Why can't I go home? I want to go home. Dad, save me. Why is no one coming to save me? I'm so scared, so scared, so scared. The cries of the women in the cave were transmitted to Fengwu's ears. The faces of those young girls were as pale as paper. Their bodies were slightly transparent, and their eyes seemed to be unfocused. They only knew how to repeat what they wanted to say. Suddenly seeing such a scene, anyone would be scared out of their wits. Fengwu was also scared to the point that her heart skipped a beat. All kinds of mournful cries constantly transmitted to her ears, and these cries made Fengwu feel unprecedentedly heavy. Until a girl who looked about 11 or 12 years old suddenly walked in front of Fengwu. Her body was also transparent, but her eyes were different from the other undead. Her eyes were unfocused, and she did not shout like the others. The girl walked in front of Fengwu and curiously stretched out her hand in front of Fengwu's eyes, as if to determine whether Fengwu could see her or not. You can see me, right? The girl's voice carried a trace of unconcealable joy, and a smile of surprise appeared on her originally pale face. Fengwu silently stared at the girl in front of her without blinking her eyes. "Can you see me?" The girl saw that Fengwu had been staring straight ahead and began to feel uncertain. She had waited for a person who could see her with great difficulty. Could it be that she wanted to leave so much that she misunderstood? But she clearly felt that this big sister in front of her could see her. "Who are you?" Fengwu asked curiously. Fengwu had never seen such a strange person. Her body was transparent, her skin was as white as paper, and her voice was erratic, which was very different from their usual voice. At this time, Fengwu still did not know that the person standing in front of her was not a person at all, but an undead. "You can really see me. This is great. I can finally leave here." The girl happily flew several laps around Fengwu, and the smile on her face could not be concealed. "Xiao Wu, who are you talking to?" Ajur was looking for any clues in the blood pool, but after looking for a long time, he found nothing. Just as Ajur was about to look around, he suddenly heard Fengwu's voice. Ajur thought that someone else had come, but when he turned around and saw that it was still only Fengwu, he asked aloud. Chapter 65. Fengwu looked at Ajur, then looked at the girl flying around her, and then pointed a pink finger at the girl. "Talk to her." What was that? Air. Ajur felt 3 black lines appear on his forehead. "There's nothing there." Ajur said that he didn't see anything. "There's someone there." Fengwu nodded seriously, her little finger still pointing at the girl. When the girl saw that Ajur couldn't see her, she instantly understood. "You don't have to point. Ordinary magicians can't see me. Although I don't know why you can see me, other people can't." She said that ordinary magicians can't see her. Fengwu honestly told him the girl's words. Ajur was never a fool. When he heard Fengwu say that, he immediately knew that Fengwu wasn't referring to people, but the undead. "Xiao Wu, can you really see that kind of thing?" Ajur felt scared. Although he was a powerful magician, humans had a natural fear of the undead. "What is that kind of thing?" Fengwu didn't understand and looked at Ajur doubtfully. "Forget it. Let's go out and talk about it." Ajur didn't want to stay in this place for a second longer. He pulled Fengwu and walked out. The girl's undead immediately chased after Fengwu. "Wait for me. Please take me with you. I can't leave this place alone." The girl's voice was full of begging. She had been here for a long time, hoping that someone could take her away. But after waiting for so long, Fengwu was the only human who could see her. If she let go of this opportunity, she didn't know when she would be able to wait for another person to take her away. "How can I take you away?" Fengwu saw the hope in the girl's eyes. She only thought for 2 seconds and decided to help her. "You just have to ask me if I'm willing to go with you." The girl said eagerly. "Are you willing to go with me?" Fengwu asked cutely. I'm willing. The young girl hurriedly replied, her voice full of relief and urgency. The moment the girl answered yes, Fengwu felt that she seemed to have a connection with the strange girl in front of her. Ajur pulled Fengwu towards the entrance of the cave. Along the way, he could hear Fengwu's voice. Originally, he didn't want to get involved. Although the undead sounded scary, they didn't have much strength. But when he heard that Fengwu wanted to take the death spirit with her, Ajur could not stay calm. That was a death spirit. What were you, a swordmaster, doing with a death spirit? When they finally got out of the cave, the death spirit naturally came out with them. The 2 people and 1 soul passed through the blizzard bear's territory and headed down the mountain. When they were about to reach the foot of the mountain, Ajur led Fengwu to a hole in a tree. He had some questions to ask her, but there were too many people at the foot of the mountain and it wouldn't be convenient for him to ask. He might as well ask her here. "You brought her out?" Ajur asked impatiently as soon as the 2 sat down. Fengwu nodded, blinking her eyes. "You only brought one out, right?" He had to ask clearly. His scalp went numb when he thought of the corpses in the cave. "Only one. That's good." Ajur finally breathed a sigh of relief. Having an undead and a group of undead by his side were 2 completely different concepts. Ask her if she was one of the girls who were caught and killed in the cave. Ajur could not see the death spirit, so he could only let Fengwu pass the message. Fengwu looked up at a certain place and repeated Ajur's question. The death spirit rolled her eyes and answered. She told me to tell you that she can hear you. She doesn't need me to pass the message. She also said that she was killed by a demon like the other girls in the cave. Fengwu honestly passed on the death spirit's words. Ajur's expression stiffened. He cursed in his heart. If he could see the death spirit, he would definitely invite her to eat a fireball. There should be a lot of death spirits in the cave. Why did she come out alone? Don't the others want to leave? Ajur could not see the death spirit, so he naturally did not know that the souls of the dead girls had already been corroded by the death spirit and lost their consciousness. How could a soul without consciousness think of leaving? The death spirit's eyes darkened as she thought of the other girls in the cave. Then, she opened her mouth and answered Ajur's question in a lonely voice. She said that the other death spirits have already lost their consciousness. She is the only one who still has her consciousness. If we go any later, she will also lose her consciousness. Fengwu passed on the death spirit's words. Why would she lose her consciousness? Ajur was not a necromancer, so his knowledge of the death spirit was limited. He did not know that the place where the girls died was filled with strong resentment. Places with strong resentment would form a kind of death spirit. The death spirit would corrode the soul's consciousness and turn it into a death spirit without consciousness. The death spirit told Ajur and Fengwu what she knew. Through the death spirit's explanation, Ajur finally understood why she was the only one who came out with Fengwu. It turned out that the other death spirits had already lost their consciousness. Then why is nothing wrong with you? Ajur was puzzled again. If that place was so powerful, it was impossible for her to be the only death spirit who was still alive and kicking. I don't know either, the death spirit said innocently. She really did not know. She was not the first girl to be caught in the cave, and naturally, she was not the last. There were more than a dozen girls who were caught in the cave after her. However, those girls who came later had all changed except for her. She was with so many death spirits all day long. If Fengwu and the others did not appear, she would definitely go crazy even if her consciousness was not corroded. Ajur asked casually. He did not expect the death spirit to really tell him the truth. He did not dwell on this question, as there were more important things to ask. Do you know who killed you? Ajur went straight to the point. The death spirit thought for a moment, then said something to Fengwu. She said it was a demon. A very scary demon, Fengwu said. Demon? What kind of answer was this? There was no difference between telling him the truth and not telling him the truth. He asked a few more questions. Although he got some clues, he could not get any more information. The two of them and the death spirit went down the mountain and returned to the village chief's house. When they arrived, the village chief had already eaten. Mealtime was always early in the small mountain village. Seeing Fengwu and Ajur come back, the villagers in the village were shocked. They could not believe that someone could come back alive from the ice bear. Chapter 66. Due to the return of Fengwu and Ajur, it caused a huge uproar in the village. People kept popping their heads out and running to the village head's door to watch the show. They really came back? There are actually people who can return from the blizzard bear. Yes, it's incredible. Could it be that those two little guys are really strong? At the village head's door, some villagers were whispering to each other. Originally, the villagers were full of doubts when they saw that the ones who accepted the mission were two immature youths. However, after seeing Fengwu and Ajur return from the mountain, although these villagers still doubted their strength, they had more confidence in them. Don't quarrel. Don't stay here. Go home. The village head's son came out to chase the villagers away. The villagers who were watching the show could only go home reluctantly. Two adventurers, have you found the whereabouts of the missing girls in our village? When the village head's son chased the villagers away, the village head was calling the two to eat. While the two were eating, the village head asked somewhat anxiously. The village head's two daughters-in-law were attentive people. When they saw that Fengwu and Ajur had not returned yet, they kindly left some food for them. The food had been kept warm in the pot. As soon as Fengwu and Ajur returned to the village head's house, they could immediately eat hot food. The two wandered around the mountain for an entire afternoon. They were already hungry and ate very quickly. Hearing the village head's question, Ajur frowned. We did find them, but they have already. A juror did not finish his sentence. The village head had already guessed what he wanted to say. Sigh. Poor children. What kind of person did this? It's really inhumane. The village head sighed deeply. Perhaps he was already mentally prepared. Although his eyes were red, he did not lose his mind because of excessive sadness. We did not find the murderer, but we found the place where he disposed of the bodies. It's in a hidden cave in the mountain. In that cave, there are at least hundreds of female bodies. Hundreds of bodies. How is this possible? Our village only lost a dozen girls. How can there be so many corpses? The village chief cried out in shock. Not all of them are girls from your village. There might be girls from other villages that have also gone missing. It's just that you guys don't know about it. When a juror discovered the dried corpses, he had already suspected that this village was not the first to lose a young girl. So many young girls' corpses could not have been accumulated overnight. Another village. The village head frowned and pondered for about half a minute before shaking his head. Our village is located in a remote area, and we don't have any contact with other villages. We really don't know what's happening in other villages. The villagers really didn't interact with many people. Other than the local villagers, there were only merchants who came to the village to buy snow crystal fruits. As a result, they didn't have many chances to interact with people from other villages. Village chief, the disappearance of the young girls this time is not as simple as it seems. You'd better go to the city lord's residence and report to the city lord. Ask the city lord to send a necromancer over. The souls of those dead girls have been unable to find release in the place where they died. They need the help of a necromancer. Although a juror had never seen the souls of those young girls, he could imagine what kind of torment their souls were going through from Feng Wu's words. A juror didn't think that he was a soft-hearted person, but he didn't mind helping those pitiful girls if he could. I understand. I'll go to the city lord's residence tomorrow morning. The village chief sighed deeply, grieving for the lost lives of the village girls. I've already marked that cave. I believe the people sent by the city lord should be able to find it easily. This matter isn't as simple as it seems. We'll continue to look for the culprit. All right, village chief, how do we get to the nearest village? How long will it take to get there? A juror already had a direction to investigate the disappearance of the young girls in this village. The nearest village. The village chief honestly told a juror the locations of the nearby villages. A juror nodded after listening. Because it was very dangerous to walk on the mountain road at night, the village chief let Feng Wu and a juror rest at home for the night. When night fell, Feng Wu and a juror went to bed early after a busy day. The village chief, however, was in a meeting with his son and daughter-in-law. The news of the girls' deaths in the village had to be told to the villagers. This matter couldn't be kept a secret. It was just a question of how to put it. Those parents who were already heartbroken must be heartbroken and in despair. Originally, they still had a glimmer of hope that the children were still alive when they didn't find the girls. But now that the bodies had been found, the poor parents' last hope had been taken away. The next day, Feng Wu and a juror left the village chief's house early in the morning. They left the village under the gazes of the villagers, and the village chief asked the villagers to bring a carriage to the city lord's residence to report the news. Feng Wu and a juror didn't go to other villages to check if there were any missing people in their villages. They went straight back to Pierre's inn. They didn't have to investigate the matter personally. It was a big deal that the village girls had gone missing. They believed that they could find out the news by simply asking around. After a juror returned to Frost City, he hired some local people with poor family conditions through Pierre to go to the nearby villages to gather information for him. The people who were hired were originally living at the bottom of society. They were hired by a juror for 20 silver coins each to gather information. This was a huge sum of money for those people. I asked Lam to prepare the clothes for tomorrow's banquet for you and Xiao Wu. You can go upstairs and try them on if you have time. As the employer, Pierre naturally provided the clothes. So when a juror and Xiao Wu went to investigate the missing girls' case, Pierre asked Lam to prepare clothes for them. Okay, a juror nodded. Fortunately, Pierre had made preparations. He really didn't prepare clothes for the banquet this time. Who would have thought that it was just a mission, and they also needed to show up at the birthday banquet of the city lord's daughter? Feng Wu sat on the side with little Bun in her arms. She didn't listen to the conversation between Ajur and Xiaowu. Little Bun was in a bad mood because he had been abandoned by his mother for a whole day. Fengwu was a little worried and hugged Little Bun to comfort him. In Fengwu's eyes, Little Bun was her only family. Seeing that the little thing was unhappy, Fengwu was of course worried. Fortunately, Little Bun was very easy to coax. After Fengwu hugged him and played with him for a whole day, he recovered his spirit. His little mouth blew bubbles, and his little face was very white. While Fengwu was coaxing Little Bun, the city lord's mansion was not very peaceful. Originally, the city lord was in a good mood because his daughter's birthday was coming, but he didn't expect that his good mood wouldn't last long. Chapter 67. You said that the missing girls from your village have been found? As the lord of a city, the city lord had a lot of things to do every day. The case of the missing girls had always been handled by his subordinates. Because the missing girls were only a dozen commoners and not nobles, the city lord's subordinates naturally did not investigate the matter too deeply. In this world, there would be class differences everywhere. In the eyes of these superiors, the lives of commoners were naturally not more important than nobles. The disappearance of one or two commoner girls was naturally not a big deal in the eyes of the city lord and the others. However, when there were many missing people, it was not a small matter. The city lord had only recently discovered that there had been a lot of missing girls in the past 2 to 3 years. The number of missing girls in the past few years added up to more than 200 people. This was not a small number. Even if the missing girls were just commoners, as long as the news spread, he would definitely be scolded as the city lord of Frost City. He still wanted to be transferred to a bigger city to be the city lord. If he could not achieve results in his political performance, it would be impossible for him to be promoted. In addition, he had heard that the little prince and princess would be arriving at Frost City in 2 days. He did not want the news of a major case in his jurisdiction to spread to the higher-ups. Now, as long as the missing girls were found, regardless of whether the murderer was found or not, there would be progress in the case. It could not be said that he did not do anything. Yes, we found them. It was the first time he had seen such a high official as the city lord. The old village chief was so nervous that his legs were trembling. Where are they? Where did you find them? Are they still alive? The city lord stood up from the city lord's throne excitedly. They were found on the mountain next to our village. There was a cave in the mountain. The girls all died in that cave. Fortunately, there were adventurers to help. Otherwise, those girls would not know how long it would take to find them. The village chief's heart sank when he thought of the girls who had died tragically. Hearing the old village chief's words, the city lord was a little unhappy. What do you mean? Are you saying that I am not capable enough to help you find the girls? Although the city lord was already dissatisfied with the old village chief, he did not show it on his face. Not only was there no anger on his face, but there was also a kind and amiable expression on his face. So there are adventurers helping you. I wonder if the adventurer has come. I must thank them for helping the people of Frost City. The city lord had always paid attention to his image and was also happy to make friends with strong people. In the city lord's imagination, someone who could survive under the blizzard bear's claws must be a strong person. This kind of person was worth making friends with. The 2 adventurers have already left, but they have accepted a quest from our village, so they should be back. The old villager said honestly. So that's how it is. The city lord nodded. Since Jirun would appear again, there was no need to hurry to find him. You came to find this city lord because... Only then did the city lord remember that he had yet to ask why this village chief came to find him. Replying to Lord Castellan, this humble one wants to ask you to send a necromancer to help those dead children. The adventurers said that those children's souls have been staying in the place where they died and cannot be released. This humble one has no choice but to ask Lord Castellan for help. Necromancer? What's the problem? You can go back first. Tomorrow or the day after, this city lord will send a necromancer to your village. The city lord raised his eyebrows in surprise at first, then nodded with a smile. The village chief was overjoyed and thanked him profusely before leaving the city lord's residence. Once the village chief left, the originally amiable city lord's face darkened. Men, increase the security. Do not let any suspicious person ruin the young lady's birthday banquet tomorrow.
Yes.
The city lord's trusted aide immediately responded respectfully. The next day, Feng Wu and Ajur woke up. The necromancer girl kept following Feng Wu, her entire spiritual body floating around, very lively. After half a day, some of the commoners who had been sent out by Ajur to gather information returned. They were all commoners who had gone to the nearby villages to gather information. Lord Adventurer, I've gathered the information you want. A few girls went missing in the village I went to a year ago. Because the people in that village were relatively poor and could not afford to hire an adventurer, they could only rely on the city lord's residents to catch the culprit. But more than a year has passed, and the culprit still has not been found. The girls have also disappeared without a trace, and there has been no news from the city lord's residents. The one who came to report was a boy who looked 14 or 15 years old. The boy's clothes were rather shabby, and he looked very thin and weak. One look, and one could tell that he did not eat well. The boy told him the information he had gathered. Yesterday, he was very lucky to be valued by this adventurer, who had asked him to go to a nearby village to gather information. As long as he brought back the information, he would be paid 20 silver coins. 20 silver coins was equivalent to 10 months' salary. In Frost City, an ordinary commoner's salary was only 2 silver coins a month. 20 silver coins was really a large sum of money. Because of the handsome reward, he immediately agreed to help gather information. 20 silver coins was enough for his family to live on for a year if he used it sparingly. Very good, this is your reward. Ajur took out 20 silver coins and handed it to the boy under the boy's burning gaze. Go to other villages and ask. 20 silver coins for a piece of information. The information must be accurate. If you dare to deceive me, you don't want to know what will happen to you. Although Ajur did not care about the money, he did not want to be taken for a fool. Therefore, he still needed to warn the boy. The boy nervously grabbed the corner of his clothes and nodded fiercely. Then, he left Pierre's store. After the boy left, 2 more people came to report the results of their investigation. There were quite a few villages where girls had gone missing in the vicinity. So far, the furthest village was the one where the girl had gone missing 2 years ago. That village was not far from Frost City, but it had a small population of only 700 people. Ajur dismissed the person who came to report the information. He only had one thought in his mind. The reward for this mission was too low. The murderer had harmed so many people, but he only gave so little money. Was the reward not proportional to the work? But after accepting the mission, unless the mission failed, they could not withdraw from it. If they could, Ajur would definitely pull Feng Wu to withdraw from the mission. It was not worth it to work so hard for so little money. Although he was not satisfied with the low reward, he had already accepted the mission. He thought it was just a small mission, but he did not expect it to involve hundreds of lives. For the whole afternoon, Ajur was not in a good mood when he thought about the low reward. When night came, the 3 changed into decent and slightly gorgeous clothes and took the invitation to the ball and went to the mayor's mansion in a carriage. Chapter 68. Tonight, the mayor's mansion was brightly lit because it was the birthday of the mayor's daughter, Miss Angel. It was decorated with lanterns and colored banners, and there was an endless stream of horses and carriages. It looked very lively. The people who alighted from the carriages were dressed in gorgeous gowns and had decent smiles on their faces. One by one, they handed in their invitations and entered the mayor's mansion. Music was already playing in the hall of the mayor's mansion. Because the ball had not yet started, there were still people arriving one after another. It was the birthday of the mayor's daughter. Those who wanted to curry favor with the mayor would not miss this opportunity. In addition to the rich merchants and nobles of the city, there were also some merchants and adventurers who came to Frost City for business. These people who were invited either had strength, wealth, or status. In short, they were not ordinary people. As for Pierre, because he was a native of Frost City and his family had been doing business for generations, he was on the invitation list. Entering the hall, Feng Wu was wearing a pink dress and a simple hair ornament in her hair. She looked cute and generous. As for Ajur, because he was a handsome young man and had an indescribable temperament, he attracted people's attention wherever he went. Pierre paled in comparison to the two of them. Because Pierre's family was declining day by day, not many people greeted him. Pierre, who was ignored, was almost like a wallflower. Fengwu walked into the hall, took a plate of food, and then hid in a corner with a jur to eat. After Pierre walked around the hall, he also pretended to bring some food to meet with Fengwu and the others. Those two over there are Winda and Dusha. Pierre carefully pointed at the two people not far away. Ajur and Fengwu looked in the direction Pierre was pointing. They saw a man and a woman. The man looked gentle and scholarly, and the woman was beautiful and gentle. They believed that no one would associate them with a scumbag man and a slut. Ajur looked at them for a long time and did not see anything wrong with them. They looked like two ordinary people. "I don't like him," Fengwu suddenly said. "Who? Is it Madame Dusha? That woman is indeed a bad woman." Pierre thought he understood the sarcasm. "That man." Fengwu shook her head and said, "Man, is it Mr. Winda? Mr. Winda has changed. Before he met Dusha, he was such a good person. Now he has become so cold and heartless." He thought of how kind Mr. Winda used to be to him. Now he was a bastard who was dazzled by beauty. "It's that demon. That demon is here." Liddy's terrified voice rang out next to Fengwu. Liddy was the name of the undead girl. After returning to the inn, Liddy told Fengwu about her life and her name. Liddy was taken to the cave and killed half a year ago. She was an ordinary girl in the village. Her parents had died in an accident before her accident, so she had been living alone. Because Liddy's parents left her some money and property, she was able to get by. Only some jealous people in the village had ideas about her from time to time. Because the village chief was a good person, he always protected her and did not let those people be punished. Unfortunately, the good times did not last long. One day, when she woke up, she found herself in a cave. Then a man in a black robe drew out all the blood in her body. She watched her blood flow out and die. After death, she turned into an undead. Then she watched the demon catch a girl every once in a while and put the girl's blood into the blood pool. In this way, more and more girls died. After death, their souls turned into resentful spirits. They were trapped there and could not be released. Fortunately, that person could not see their souls, so their souls were preserved. It was impossible for Liddy to not have hatred in her heart. Her biggest wish was to kill that demon and avenge all the girls who were hurt. "Who is it?" Through Fengwu's words, Ajur also knew what Liddy was shouting. His heart suddenly tightened. Liddy pointed in a direction and shouted loudly. Fortunately, she was a soul. No matter how loud she shouted, no one could hear her. "Is it Winda or Dusha?" Pierre also knew that Fengwu was responsible for another task. He did not think that the murderer of the two tasks could be the same person. But was it possible? "It's Mr. Winda," Fengwu said with certainty. "Winda?" Ajur raised his eyebrows. He originally thought that it would be Dusha. He did not expect that it would be Winda. This was really interesting. The corner of his mouth hooked up into a meaningful smile. "Mr. Winda is the murderer who killed so many girls." If it was not because the current situation was not right, Pierre simply wanted to scream out loud. Liddy flew in front of Winda and kept shouting at him. Unfortunately, Winda could not hear anything. Liddy was throwing flirtatious glances at a blind man. That Dusha must have asked something. If the murderer is really Mr. Winda, then the mastermind behind it must be Dusha. Pierre said with certainty. "What you said is also possible. It is impossible for a person to suddenly change so much." Ajur had done a thorough investigation on Mr. Winda's character. Those who had helped in his family said that he was a very good gentleman. He was gentle and polite to people. He never lost his temper with the servants. How could such a nice guy suddenly turn into a cold-blooded demon? If there wasn't any special reason, Ajur wouldn't believe it. Fengwu obediently stood at the side and ate. Her little mouth was stuffed with food. Her interest in this topic was not as high as the food in her hands. "The city lord has arrived. Miss Angel and the city lord's wife have also arrived." The guests put down the food in their hands or ended the topic they were talking about. They stood on both sides to welcome the city lord's family. Behind the city lord's family, there was a young man and a young girl. The young man had a head of silver hair. No emotion could be seen in his ice blue eyes. The aura on his body was as cold as the winter. The young girl beside the young man was the complete opposite. The young girl's hair and eyes were the same color as the young man beside her. People could see at a glance that the two were related by blood. The young girl's face had a bright and beautiful smile. Her snow-white dress made her even more beautiful and lovely. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my daughter's birthday party. My daughter will start the dance. The party will officially begin. Thunderous applause sounded from below the stage. Angel directly invited the white-haired young man to dance. The young man hesitated for a moment, but still agreed. The young man and young woman began to dance. Fuck. Why did that guy also come? When a juror saw the white-haired young man's appearance, his complexion was somewhat strange. He really did not expect to see that guy in this place. However, this was that guy's base camp. It was normal for him to appear here. Chapter 69. A juror's expression returned to normal in an instant. Neither Fengwu nor Pierre noticed the change in a juror's expression. Strange. Those two people shouldn't be from Frost City. I've never seen them at any kind of ball. As a native of Frost City, Pierre naturally had a certain understanding of the nobles in the city. Suddenly seeing two unknown teenagers who seemed to be nobles naturally aroused his curiosity. Those two are not important passers-by. Don't worry about them. You can find a chance to introduce me and Xiaowu to Wanda and Dusha. As for our identities, you can just say that we're adventurers who have accepted a mission to investigate a case. But if Mr. Wanda is really the murderer who killed so many girls, you too will be in danger. Pierre was a little hesitant. Although he dreamed of rescuing Clara, he also didn't want innocent people to be hurt. Don't worry, we're not ordinary people. If he wants to hurt us, he has to see if he has the strength to do so. The juror's face was full of confidence. Pierre looked at Fengwu again and found that the girl's small face was still expressionless, and she was still eating. He silently looked away. He shouldn't have expected this girl to have any other opinions. After Fengwu finished the food on her plate, Pierre led Fengwu and a juror to where Wanda and his wife were. Uncle Wanda, long time no see. Pierre greeted Wanda politely. Pierre, I haven't seen you for a while. How have you been? Wanda smiled very kindly. It was believed that when seeing such a gentle person, no one would be able to associate him with a murderer. When Wanda looked at Pierre with a smile, he naturally noticed a juror and Fengwu. The two teenagers were very outstanding, especially the teenager, who had an extraordinary temperament, like a child of a noble family. But he was sure that he had never seen this boy among the nobles of Frost City. It was really strange. These two are adventurers who have accepted the mission to help Clara. Pierre calmly introduced the two to Wanda when he noticed Wanda's gaze. Wanda's expression did not change. Other than being a little surprised, he did not show any abnormal reaction. On the other hand, Madame Tusha, who had been standing at the side with a gentle smile, had a strange look flash across her eyes when she heard about Fengwu and a juror. Her expression also became a little strange. Her abnormality naturally didn't escape a juror and Pierre's eyes. This time, they were even more certain that there was definitely something wrong with this Madame Tussaud. Hello, Mr. Wanda. Hello, Madame Tussaud. I am a juror, and this is my partner, Fengwu. A juror's smile was very gentle, and there was no trace of his usual arrogant appearance. Pierre had never seen a juror's true nature, so he didn't find it strange. As for Fengwu, she wouldn't question a juror at all. In short, in front of outsiders, a juror was always able to successfully hide his true nature, making people think that he was a gentle and polite young man. Wanda and his wife had this kind of feeling. You are really a gentle and polite child. No wonder you can become an adventurer at such a young age. You are really amazing. Wanda nodded with a smile, and his eyes were full of appreciation for the outstanding younger generation. You are flattering me, a juror said with an embarrassed face. You can rest assured that I will do my best to prove Miss Clara's innocence and rescue her as soon as possible so that your family can reunite, a juror suddenly said. Wanda's expression stiffened for a moment and then returned to normal. Then I will have to trouble you, young man, because Marlene's death has made me upset, and I don't know how to face Clara. I will have to trouble you for everything. A juror and Wanda chatted for a while, and not long after, the three of them went to a corner. Fengwu carried the plate and continued to get food. As for Ajur and Pierre, the two hid behind the pillar and chatted in a low voice. What do you think? That Madame Tussaud is very suspicious, right? Pierre carefully looked around to see if anyone was approaching, and after making sure that no one was around, he asked in a low voice. Both of them are very suspicious. After Madame Tussaud heard our identity, her expression became very unnatural, and Wanda was too calm. He didn't seem to be worried about his daughter at all. He said that he didn't know how to face his daughter. In my opinion, he didn't want to see his daughter at all. In short, the two couples gave him a very strange feeling. I think so too. In fact, before Madame Tussaud appeared, Mr. Wanda loved Clara the most. But now that Madame Tussaud is here, he doesn't care about Clara at all. I always feel that Mr. Wanda's change is too big, and it must be related to Madame Tussaud. You can't be suspecting that Madame Tussaud used some kind of magic on Wanda to make him not recognize his own family, right?
Ajur stroked his chin and asked with interest.
Well, that's what I think. How can a person suddenly change so much? It's not normal at all. Pierre already had such suspicions, but because his strength was not enough, he couldn't confirm his suspicions. Your idea is very likely, but I just observed Wanda for a long time, and he doesn't look like a person who is being controlled by magic at all. He still had this kind of insight. It's not? Could it be that Madame Tussaud is too powerful, and you didn't see the problem? With Ajur's age, Pierre found it hard to believe that a youth of this age could have any superior insight. Ajur also didn't get angry because of his suspicions. The feeling that those two people gave him was too strange. Wanda's calmness, Madame Tussaud's hesitation, the two people showed two completely different emotions. What did it mean? While the two youths were chatting, Fengwu was holding a plate and unceasingly picking up food from the table. The city lord's mansion's chef was very good, and the food they made was very delicious. Fengwu had always been interested in eating, so if there was an opportunity to casually eat, she naturally wouldn't let it go. Roasted meat, sausages, meat sauce, meatballs, chicken drumsticks, chicken wings, pork trotters, cakes, fried fish, grilled fish, meat rolls, fruits, roasted potatoes, and other kinds of vegetables. In short, there were all kinds of food on the table. After a plate was finished, there would immediately be a servant who would directly serve a plate of freshly made food. Fengwu directly stood at the table and started eating. Her eating speed was very fast, but although it was fast, it didn't look rude. Heavens, how many lifetimes have you not eaten anything? A voice suddenly sounded beside Fengwu, full of disbelief. Fengwu raised her head and glanced at it. She hadn't seen it before, so she continued to eat. The girl who spoke was none other than the white-haired youth who had been brought by the city lord. Now, standing beside Fengwu was that girl. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.